Hello everyone. Today, a very interesting story awaits you. And before it starts, I would like to ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It was a quiet, calm, sunny day in the beautiful Gansu province, Murim Alliance. Appetizing and fragrant food was on the table, which filled the entire space, beckoning the eye. Having completely relaxed, the man in a good mood decided to sit down at the dinner table, asking everyone to behave more quietly. It was the head of Murima's alliance, Hu Gon. The old man sat down comfortably, took chopsticks and a spoon in his hands, and chose where to start the meal. As soon as the master chose the first course, the maid abruptly and unexpectedly tore off into the room. The chief exhaled heavily and asked what had happened. The girl said that she had urgent news. He continued eating and said he was busy and told him to come back in 2 hours. But the beauty decided not to return after 2 hours and greeted the old man. It was the strategist of the Murima alliance, Chegal He. The young girl approached Hu Gon. He knew she wouldn't go, but he was even glad to have her. The chairman offered her to sit down to eat with him, but the girl refused, saying that she did not want to get fat. Hu Gon advised her to eat more to look more appetizing. Grandfather invited her to look at him because he thinks he is beautiful. The girl, with thoughtfulness in her voice, answered that he looks good. The man, making a cute face and smiling, asked if he was handsome and charming. The girl thought and decided to remain silent. Her expression looked very serious. A minute later, her mood quickly changed. Chegal He began to laugh loudly and heartily. Chegal He said she came with important news, but maybe she'd better go, as he said. Hu Gon reminded her that she never left after saying that. The man continued to eat, and the girl said that she had 2 news, bad and good. He wanted to start with a good one. The good news was that the king of the Green Forest reported that he had succeeded in raising a herd of cows, and the quality of the beef was perfect. The head was glad that he had finally found his purpose. Turning his attention away from his food, Hu Gon said it was too early to be happy and decided to ask about the bad news. It turned out that the Honam branch of the alliance was riding as if the holy swordsman had decided to wander. Based on the time and route, the man understood that the time of arrival in their city would be around noon. It seemed that the secret was in a hurry. A holy swordsman stood in the darkness. He used to be one of the best fencing masters in the country, but he disappeared 10 years ago. People thought that he would never return to Jianggu. But unexpectedly for everyone, he challenged the head of the Murima alliance to a duel. Sitting down at the table opposite the head, the girl asked him about what he planned to do. The man continued to eat calmly, concentrating on the process of the meal and not paying much attention to it. After thinking about it, looking at her and smiling, Hu Gon told her that he decided to run. The girl was very angry, but the head answered her that it was better to give up the position than to be killed by a swordsman. With a calm expression on his face as he continued his meal, he reminded himself that he had held this title for 30 years, and the time had come for him to hand over his title as the strongest swordsman. Chegal He persuaded the man to accept this challenge and really wanted to see his martial arts, but the old man refused her. She mentioned that he had sent the bloody priest of the demonic cult, the ghost emperor of the ghouls, and the king of the Tibetan slayer demons to hell, but the head thought it was just luck. In a misunderstanding, the girl asked if he killed her by accident, to which she received a positive answer. Exhaling heavily, the man asked to look at him, after which he complained that lately he was short of breath even from a light walk. He had to be out of town by midnight, leaving the alliance at Chegal He. After listening to the northern fairy of the mystical yin, who invited smelts to visit in their season, he decided that maybe he would become a farmer on the mountain of the Royal Bull or go towards the North Sea. Chegal He turned her back on him, said that wherever he went, she would follow him in 6 months. Exhaling heavily, he didn't understand what it was for him and why she couldn't leave him alone. The man sits in shock with his hands on his head, but she responds as if she doesn't care. The girl asks if he really does not want to go to battle, but the old man at this moment stops her by showing silence.
Chegal He, confused and not understanding what is happening, tries to address him.
The old man begins to see a strange vision delusion. His eyes begin to glow, but he asks her to be silent. In the forest are 3 men who send a messenger to the leaders of the alliance as the Hyungnam branch has fallen to the enemy. A holy swordsman appears who killed everyone, but Shaolin and Wudan monks will try to stop him. Whether they will succeed is unknown. Gon tries to figure out if he really is the killer, because the holy swordsman was known for his nobility and honesty. The only reason for such behavior was the corruption of energy, an anomaly that leads to addiction by demons. Enraged by these events, the head decides to find out where the swordsman is now. An incredibly destructive and powerful storm begins. The girl, defending herself from the gusts, tries to shout to her uncle. One of the men tried to calm her down, saying that it was the head who was doing the practice and we should wait for his orders. A thief appears and addresses a squad of 108 Shaolin Ahats, threatening to go through their ranks like a knife through butter, covering everything with blood. Everything ends, there is a complete mess around, and the girl in confusion asks her uncle what he did. The old man explains to her that the swordsman suffered energy damage and became addicted. Chegal-he is in shock, remembering that he was always honest and noble. Gon remembers standing in the spring garden with the swordsman and wonders how low the man has now fallen. Unexpectedly, the old man decides to urgently go in search of a swordsman. At the same moment, the strategist did not have time to recover, as a powerful stream of magical power covered her. The old man, with the help of his powerful energy, created a portal and through it dissolved in an unknown direction. The girl stood in complete confusion. One of the men tried to appeal to the swordsman to come to his senses. He stood in front of them a terrible shadow, and they tried to understand why he commits such atrocities, because his nobility was the greatest in the world. Chun-gu agreed with the boy's opinion, and at the same moment, without thinking, cut off his head. The swordsman smiled and began to say that he was always gentle and kind, while the fat man did not deny himself anything. He remembered how, despite all this, he was still considered the strongest and looked down on everyone, and he must have been happy for himself when he sent the swordsman into exile. The chief, taking him by the shoulder, said that it was ridiculous, because he who is not worthy to be, even his servant, is a holy swordsman. The man had humility and calmness because he had to be like that. Always. Forever. Chun-gu recalls how he once heard that he had to be like this because he was not worthy of his rank, but the man doubted whether it was true. Because he had everything: talents, abilities, muscles, sex, knowledge, and wisdom. Burning with anger, the swordsman couldn't understand what Gon had that he didn't. With a terrible smile and madness in his eyes, he decided that he would teach the chief to obey because he had to stand on his knees before him. Standing in front of the civilians, the swordsman ordered everyone to bow before him and worship him. He wanted to force respect for his patience and humility, which he had to endure all the time. Abat stood opposite Chun-gu and began to tell him that he was out of his mind and how he could go headlong into his pride and rage. The swordsman was furious and told the old man to shut up. He said that he had no intention of listening to him because he was just a grass-eating rabbit. The man wanted to try to strike, but the mad swordsman attacked him. There was a sharp flash. The heathen made a strong swing with the sword. Negative energy filled the entire space. Abat managed to survive while Chun-gu frantically screamed that no one would stop him. Holding his sword firmly and confidently, he assured that no one could prevent his death. The destructive force destroyed everything around. Men stood in panic. They tried to protect themselves from the evil force. The holy swordsman laughed terribly and rejoiced that his destructive energy made him the strongest warrior in the world. An unexpected, strange flash of light appeared in the middle of the place, forming a portal. A silhouette was visible in the middle of the circle. Chun-gu was angry, in a flood of rage and trying to figure out what it was or who it was. Opposite him stood the head with a great powerful force. He watched him carefully. Kneeling, the swordsman turned to Gon. The tall one looked him in the eyes. The saint, bowing his head, laughed. Chun-gu began to say that he felt that no matter what he did, the man would still not catch up with the head. Reaching for his sword, he thought it was for nothing. The swordsman turned to Gon, saying that he saw a vision in the darkness where he would not be able to keep his strength for long. He saw everything that he would lose. Recalling the dream, Chun-gu said that he would be so weak that he would be blown away by the wind, but the main thing was that the old man would die soon. Gon was furious. With a displeased and commanding look, he ordered the chatter to stop. With just one snap of his fingers, the magical power enveloped the swordsman and tore him to pieces, killing him. The old man stood motionless, blood-stained swords hung behind him, and he himself looked at the place where he had destroyed the saint. When he opened his eyes, the the man was confused about what had happened. It seemed to him that it was all a dream, lying in bed and carefully inspecting the room. He tried to understand what happened and what place. Getting up from his sleeping place, the man thought that he had been taken somewhere while he was sleeping. It was someone else's bedroom. Standing up, the man barely took a few steps. Hugon managed to hold on to the edge of the table. He felt a complete lack of strength. When he approached the mirror, he was in complete shock. The old man could not believe what he saw. After looking completely in the mirror, the man found that he had become much younger, but he did not look like this before. The head felt that there was nothing in this body. There was no soul apart from him. This was the impetus for only one option. He swapped souls, according to this, and bodies with someone else, but he didn't know who. Barely leaning on the table, he felt that his body was almost on its last breath, and his energy and physical conditions were simply terrible. At this moment, the old man remembered the words of the killed swordsman that Hugon would not be able to maintain his strength for long. Taking hold of his head, the man thought, because everything happened as the madman said, and it was not pre-death nonsense, although half a year had already passed since his death. Hugon began to worry that if it wasn't him, then who transferred his energy into someone else's body, and why was it all necessary? The head wondered if he was the target. What was happening to his body now? There were many questions about whether the owner of this tortured body had taken up residence in him, who he was, and where he was now. After examining himself, the old man noticed that his whole body was covered with a large number of incomprehensible wounds, bandaged. Going closer to the mirror, Hugon looked into it, trying to understand who this young man he had become. A man stands in front of a mirror, looks at the reflection and tries to understand who this young man is with whom he moved in. Pressing the mirror with his hand, he cursed, because how could one dispose of his soul and body for him? And who should do it if he had no enemies? After carefully inspecting the room and the things that were in it, it turned out that the boy's family lives quite well. Looking at his reflection again, Hugon wondered why the young man's body was so mutilated and hoped that nothing would happen to his body. A noise was heard outside the door. The man was frightened, alert, and in a state of confusion. Someone's steps were heard. He was thinking whether to pretend to rest or stay put. An old man opened the door, addressed the boy as a child, and was satisfied that he was awake. Hugon was surprised because the grandfather addressed him as a child. I wondered if the man did not know when and how all this happened to him. Looking into the old man's eyes, the head suddenly realized that he had seen him somewhere and clearly knew him. It was the most important librarian and scholar of the great heavenly library, Bomchon. It was a great heavenly library. This building has been managed by a family of scientists from generation to generation. This landmark is one of the 3 grand ones on the Central Plain. The main men of the family know everything about ancient texts and artifacts, and Bomchon himself is a scholar of such a caliber that current specialists pale in comparison to him. Looking at the old man, the head remembered as if he had met him 4 to 5 years ago. He looked the same as when they first met. This meant that it was the same time period in which he left his body. The grandfather, sitting down, called the child to him, saying that he would finally fulfill his dream wish. Hugon was confused. He was trying to understand what he wanted. The chief clearly did not know what was happening here, but the old man clearly did not take him for his grandson. He carefully sat down next to Bomchon, waiting for his next thoughts, words and actions. Grandpa held out his hand to him with an open sack and some kind of round pill inside. Looking at the pill, the head thought that it might be medicine. He was very weak and thought that maybe this was what would cure him. Looking at the old man directly in the eyes, Hugon understood that something was wrong here. The man looked at him with a very sad look and spoke of some old desire. It turned out that all the wounds and scratches on the young man's body were the result of a large number of suicide attempts. Looking into his eyes, he realized that what he brought could only be poison. After the question was asked to the grandfather about this secret poison, there was absolute silence in the room. The old man, looking displeased at the child, emphasized that the grandson should not talk to elders like that. In his thoughts, the man remembered. He should be talked to like an adult. Therefore, with a polite intonation, he asked him if he was offering poison. Without even objecting, the grandfather confidently handed him the poison and ordered him to eat it immediately. After looking at the whole picture before eating it, Hugon wanted to ask one more question. He began to wonder who is now the new head of Marima's alliance. The old man was in a misunderstanding. He wanted to know why his granddaughter was worried about it. The man had to know whether he was involved in the exchange of souls and who he had become. He wanted to tell his grandfather that this was very important to him, but he told him to keep quiet. Unexpectedly, Bom Chon went berserk, like a grandson constantly trying to end his life and persuaded to kill him, and now asks about the head of the alliance. He shouted whether he could die and how much he would suffer. It was not clear why the old relative was so angry, but it was necessary to calm him down. Therefore, Hugon tried to address him calmly without using unnecessary expressions. The man had no idea what was happening. He turned to the old man with the words that he did not want to die and the morning was wiser than the evening, and asked to talk tomorrow. The situation was strange and it was necessary to understand everything in the course of events. Grandfather sat down and lowered his head. He tried to address his grandson. Cursing sharply, the grandfather decided to suddenly pounce directly on Hugon with all his might. The head did not want to allow his relative to abuse him like that. He wanted to quickly calm him down with the gust of wind from his fingers technique. Only the man folded his fingers, trying to perform the reception. Nothing worked. Before he could recover from the shock, Hugon found that he would have to run after all. The grandfather looked scary. The head could not run normally. In his opinion, he was slower than a snail. In a split second, the old man used all his strength, sharply pressed him directly to the floor. Scared, Hugon started screaming that Grandpa would crush him. The man asked Bon Chon to get off him. Grandfather actively tried to put a pill in his mouth. He wanted the young man to finally die. The chief begged him to stop. The old man actively covered his grandson's mouth, emphasizing that he would follow him as soon as he died. The poison began to dissolve. It had to be spit out immediately. Grandfather continued to wish him dead. Suddenly, Hugon decided to defend himself by pushing him away very hard with his hand. The old man was confused by what had happened and hit back. A fight broke out between these two. As a result of the fight, the head, falling to his knees, was finally able to pour out the entire content of this bad news. After recovering, the man felt dizziness in his head and very strong weakness in his hands. He fell face down on the floor, realizing that he was poisoned. Grandfather sat nearby, watching what was happening to him. The realization came to Hugon. He could die now just like this, a senseless death. Looking at the young man's body, the old man wanted him to finally die, reminding him that he had only dreamed of this because he didn't care to be allowed to die. The body began to separate from the soul. Thoughts echoed in his head that he was not his grandson at all, but the head of Miriam's alliance. But the grandfather began to speak. Although he was able to fulfill his wish, the young man is still his grandson, and it is really hard for him to watch him suffer. The man's eyes began to roll. He could not realize that he would die like this, in someone else's body. As he continued to lie without strength, he thought how many normal people were around, and he was overpowered into a boy who dreams of suicide. He will die without even knowing who sent him into this body. The man opened his eyes wide. He should not die now, even under such circumstances. Trying to get up, it became clear that the head would not save himself, but he had one secret means left. The grandson began to call his grandfather with all his might, and he immediately responded to the voice with surprise. Realizing that he didn't really want to do it, but he had to, the man held out his hand to the old man. The relative stood in complete confusion and stupor. The grandson began to beg him breathlessly, while the old man stood in shock, not understanding what was happening. Fighting with his last strength for life, the young man asked him for help because he did not want to die. After these words, he immediately collapsed without strength, losing consciousness. There was absolute silence. Grandfather was in complete shock. His face reflected surprise and embarrassment at what had been done. From the stress, drops of sweat began to run down his face. In confusion, the man could not even say something for the first time. Finally, looking again at the pale face of his grandson, he began to call the doctors for help. Flash of light. The boy slowly, trying to understand what is happening, opens his eyes. Exhaling very hard and languidly, he decides to stand up, resting his back on the bed. In one moment, the young man was very surprised, realizing that he was not in his body. The boy decided to look around the room, walking along all the walls and corners of the room. As he passed one of the walls in the room, he noticed that there were large, strong swords hanging on it. They clearly caught his eye. In a calm voice, the young man decided to find out if his maid Manhwa was in the room. He never received an answer, so he gladly decided to approach them even closer. Realizing that she wouldn't come, and wouldn't even be able to if she wanted to, the boy decided to get one of the swords. Taking out the sword from under the cover, he realized that they had changed bodies. That is, souls. It really wasn't a dream, so the young man confidently raised the sword to his throat with satisfaction. Finally he could. Streams of blood flowed down the sword. He, after all, managed to kill himself. The servant runs quickly and confusedly to Chegalhe with urgent and very bad news. The man tells the strategist about a more terrible event that happened to the head of the Marima Alliance. The girl is in a state of shock and confusion. She cannot say a word and believe what she said. Head Hugon's body will never be alive again. He will no longer be able to return to it. Bomchon pondered how even a small dose of blood toadstool poison could affect his grandson's judgment. There were also cases of poisoning that caused memory loss and increased aggressiveness. The grandfather looked at his grandson with sad eyes. He remembered how the poison touched the boy's tongue and reflected on what he had done. The unknown servant was looking at the young man. He was also sorry to hear this story and looked at his master with pity. Bomchon watched the sleep of his crippled boy, unconsciously resting after being poisoned. The servant assumed that his master had lost all hope for his child. The unknown man bowed to his master and expressed his hope that the black streak of his master's family would finally come to an end. A young man in white clothing stood by the bed of a crippled youth and answered the questions of another unknown voice. Another young man approached the bed. He did not expect that the young man knew how to sleep. The boy in white called the crippled man his elder brother and was surprised that the injured man asked his grandfather to spare him. A drunken young man grabs another and needs not to call the tortured one that. He considers the injured boy a monster. The middle brother was so upset that he decided to come and visit his elder brother. He orders his youngest to leave the room with him. His grandfather came to the crippled boy, who was still looking at his grandson with confusion and thinking about the words said by his relative. The tired young man was also visited by an unknown servant of the old man who took care of the boy's condition and checked his pulse. Only in the evening was the suicide man able to stay alone and sleep, recovering his health. He only managed to utter an unknown sound. Finally, the boy opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling. He realized that only 3 people had visited him. Hugon, who was in the boy's body, realized that the suicide bomber's name is Bom Khan, and he is the eldest heir of the Great Heavenly Library. He has 2 younger brothers. The head realized that after the drunken middle brother, no one had come for a very long time. The man assumed that Bom Khan's parents had long since died because they would have visited their seriously ill son, and this would have been the reason for the boy's desire to commit suicide. Hugon did not understand why the grandfather tried to kill his own grandson, and no one came to the commotion and noise. Remembering the brothers' quarrel, he realized that Bom Khan's mental illness had affected everyone in the Heavenly Library family. The old man in the body of the young man shook his head and decided that family troubles should not concern him. The spirit of the head stood over the body of the crippled boy and tried to understand how he got into the body of the heir of the library. Hugon decided to fix Bom Khan's body so that he could move around normally and later solve his problem. He wanted to know what happened to his own body and why all these situations happened to him. The man sternly looked up, looking aggressively at the unknown figure and as if preparing for battle. The stranger held him in his hand and infected him with a dark substance. Hugon wanted to know who was behind his soul transfer into another body. The first thing that had to be decided before looking for answers was to eat well. The old man in Bom Khan's body had not eaten for a very long time. The sunlight blinded the man's eyes. Wearily, he opened them to look at something. An unknown girl suddenly hovered over a sick boy. He looked at her very frightened because he did not expect to see anyone. The young person jumped away from the air in fear because she did not expect any reaction from him. She apologized to the patient because she wanted to remove something from his chin. Bom Khan stood up. The young man was very frightened and began to exhale anxiously, calming himself down. He scolded the girl for approaching him and asked about her eyesight. Hugon was very surprised that he didn't notice the stranger next to him. The old man compared his past body with the new one because before he could hear the movement of insects at a distance of 50 meters and even count the number of their legs. Bom Khan asked the girl's name. She was surprised by this and assumed that the poison might have damaged the head. The maid questioned the boy about his memory because this was exactly what the doctor emphasized. The beauty's name is Manhwa. The servant looked very surprised at the crippled young man, who did not remember her at all. The man confirmed that he was injured and really doesn't remember anything. He asked the girl to make him porridge because he wanted to eat and talk about her life. The young woman was very surprised. The maid's gaze immediately turned gloomy. She did not understand why her master asked for such a thing at all and therefore became very angry. The crippled boy in the bed did not understand his servant's reaction. Seonghwa still looked gloomy and angry. She asked her master again. The beauty still did not understand why her master wanted to eat. She asked Bom Khan about his intentions after he got food and regained his strength. The girl became hysterical and looked very panicked and frightened and stressed that the boy would be able to kill himself again as soon as he could walk again, and the boy only needed to eat for that. She remembered the young head librarian who would be very saddened by the death of his grandson. Seonghwa also reminded the crippled man of his younger brothers who worry about Bom Khan as much as their grandfather. The maid emphasized to Bom Khan that all the residents of the library are worried about him and each of them can commit suicide along with their master. She worriedly tried to convince the boy to abandon the idea of taking his own life. Listening to the girl's speech, Hugon in the young man's body did not understand her efforts and the meaning of her speech, because he asked for a simple thing. Bom Khan tried to ask the maid again for food, but Seonghwa thought her master was lying to her, so she pointedly crossed her arms and turned away from the boy. The man decided to play a joke on his maid because the boy would have to die of hunger. In response, Seonghwa was very worried and objected to her master. Hugon looked at the maid, but she did not understand why the young man was making fun of himself. He assumed that Seonghwa was physically advanced because she had to repeatedly save him from suicide. The chief decided not to argue with the young person because all the talk about food made no sense. So he decided to ask those things that really bothered him and he wanted to know. He turned to the girl with a question. The beauty turned to the host's question and covered one eye as a sign of interest. The young man asked a subordinate about the head of the alliance, Marima. Seonghwa was very upset at such a question and did not understand its relevance in the given situation. Bom Khan was sneaking up on the maid and saying nice things to her. She immediately beckoned to her master, her eyes shining with joy. The maid mysteriously turned away from the young man. He sat interested in his bed and waited for an answer. The young woman decided to tell her master the answer to his question. Seonghwa called the current head of the alliance, Murim, a fat boar and a pig. Hugon, who was in the boy's body, was very surprised by the answer because no one had ever called him that. The maid imagined the head of the alliance as a very fat person whose eyes do not open even through a smooth face. She cannot imagine how a person with such weight can move calmly. The young girl tells the host that the chief has the audacity to call himself the most powerful warrior in the world, who allegedly killed a holy swordsman with his pig-like complexion. The maid does not even consider it necessary to tell her master the name of the head of the Marima alliance because Nugon is not worthy of it because of his forms and arrogance. Bom Khan looks upset because of the girl's words. Seonghwa asks him about his health because the young man looks strange. The boy quarreled with the girl because he thought that saying bad and offensive things about a person without her presence is not correct and polite. She denies the words of her master because she was telling the truth. He objected to the girl's words because he considered the head of the alliance a great man, so he shook his head sadly. She was steadfast in her judgments. The crippled young man shouted that Nugon was a great man because he could not insult himself and had to protect his rights, skills, and achievements. The head of the alliance, Marima, began to brag because it was only because of him that the peace and well-being of Jangu was maintained. In his head, he imagined himself as a large man with an incredible appearance. Bom Khan continued to talk about the mighty warrior, but suddenly the boy felt sick. Seonghwa began to worry about the young master again. The crippled boy believed that smoothness made a person more beautiful, but the maid only began to deny the charm of the appearance of fat people. The young man told his assistant that the head of the alliance was an example for him, and it was the crippled young man, looking sick, who really wanted to be like Nugon himself. Seonghwa did not pay attention to the wishes of her master, but only decided to show contempt for the words of the crippled young man. Only the words of Bom Khan's desire to live again and be like Nugon prompted the maid to go and prepare food for her master. The crippled boy, smiling, waved his hand at the beauty, who ran urgently to fulfill her master's wishes. Through the words of the maid, he discovered that his soul did not move in time. The usual transfer of souls took place with the men's bodies. The head of the alliance was worried about the suffering of the young man in his body. Nugon in the boy's body cast his eyes down sadly, because the warrior had doubts about the integrity of his native flesh. After 10 days, Bom Khan's body almost completely recovered because the boy regularly ate porridge 2 to 3 times a day and took medicinal extracts prescribed by the doctor. As a result, the young man can stand. 2 unknown figures are walking around the room of the great heavenly library. One of them noted that the young man does not look like himself. It turned out to be the head of the holy building and his servant. The subordinate told the old man that there is no more reason to worry about the grandson's health and that memory loss contributes to this. Bom Chon was very worried that his expectations would be too high. He was worried that his boyfriend would try to commit suicide again after his recovery. Standing over his child's bed, the head of the library told his servant that the head of the Murima alliance had committed suicide. The crippled young man also heard the old man's conversation with his servant. He was very surprised because the great warrior expected to return to his body. The servant agreed with his grandfather and mused that it was very surprising that the head of the Murima alliance did not die at the hands of the demonic cult, but staged his own massacre of himself. Bom Khan, gritting his teeth, could not contain his anger. He was angry because such a death is not worthy of the great warrior Nugon. The grandfather and the servant saw the movement of the young heir. Bom Chon assumed that his grandson was having nightmares and lowered himself a little closer to his bed. The head of the library and the servant firmly took the young man's crippled hand. They tried to calm him down because of what they thought was a terrible dream. Suddenly, Nugon woke up and started loudly cursing and threatening to kill Bom Khan, who committed suicide in the body of a great warrior. With a menacing look, the headman radiated anger at the former heir of the heavenly library and asked the already dead boy trivial questions. Threats of murder from the boy did not stop, because the heir did not even ask for permission to dispose of the man's body himself and committed suicide. Tiredness quickly made itself felt. The cripple quickly collapsed on his bed, thereby surprising the grown men who were next to him in the room. Bom Chon looked at his ward with a confused look because he did not expect such a rude and lively reaction from his grandson, who had been trying to kill himself all this time. The frightened servant of the head of the heavenly library confirmed what he heard from his master, although the content of Bom Khan's words was scary and ominous. Both men wept with joy because the heir had never shown a thirst for murder, which indicated a desire for life. The master of the library and his servant said at the same time that they had never heard more beautiful words from the boy. The boy's servant Seonghwa was standing still when she suddenly heard some strange noises. She turned her head and heard him laughing hysterically, lying on his back. He was crying tears of laughter, realizing that he would never be able to get his body back. The head decided that he could not just give up like that. Getting up from the bed, he drove Seonghwa to him. With a smile, Hugon suggested that the girl go to exercise. The young girl opened her mouth in surprise. It was too unexpected for her, so she questioned him again. Watching everything happening from the trees, the 3 guards were in complete shock. Grandfather could not believe what he heard. He was told that Bom Khan was doing push-ups. One of the servants confirmed these words. He also reported that the young man has been diligently engaged in physical education for 2 days. In the beginning, because of the trembling of his hands, he fell again and again, and nothing succeeded. But now the boy can push up 7 times on a daily basis and continues to train intensively. The man sat down in surprise. The old man asked the servant why he didn't tell him anything earlier. The servant apologized because he thought he would give up training as his body was in bad physical condition. But he stubbornly and persistently decided to continue. And so he is already actively doing squats. Bom Khan even started doing the rider stance. The maid supported him, saying that everything was working out just fine. Also, his new hobby, martial stretching, became unexpected and surprising for everyone. The young man also asked to prepare a variety of food for him. The grandfather, holding his head, understood that he knew what physical condition his grandson had better than others, and he even breathed heavily. The boy began to eat large portions, drink more than a bucket of water a day, and actively engage in sports. The servant and the old man understood only one thing while talking. Yes, this is similar to last year's case. Last year there was a similar situation. When his mood improved, he adjusted his diet and even smiled at those he met. It seemed that he had started a new life. The young man had to make sure that the supervision was relaxed. He immediately tried to hang himself. Fortunately, Bom Khan was taken down before he suffocated. The boy was saved. Everyone who saw him that day remembers with horror his maddened, soul-scaring laugh. There was no vision. The eyes were bloodshot. The servant assured the grandfather that the boy was behaving much more skillfully than last time. He was almost certain that he was training his strength to be able to kill himself instantly. Grandfather looked very upset. In fact, he really wanted to believe his grandson. A memory flashed in his head when the young man asked him for help, said that he did not want to die. He didn't know what his motives were, but he begged him to be spared. Also mentioned was the incident where Bom Khan's whole body was shaking with tension and anger when he cried out in his sleep that he was going to kill him. The grandfather did not want to interfere with the recovery of his grandson just because he was afraid for him. He wanted to talk to him. The old man asked to bring him. When the young man approached him, he began to question him about his memory and whether he remembered anything. The guy still didn't remember anything. The man questioned Bom Khan. He began to get nervous and replied that he did not remember anything at all. The old man tensed but could not understand. He thought that something must have happened to the boy. Grandfather asked him if he was trying to stretch. He received a positive response. The grandson did not want to lose even a second. The man couldn't believe how the boy could spread his legs so wide. The chief thought it wasn't a stretch because he only spread his legs a little more than shoulder width apart. The man felt that his body was as soft as porridge, and he could not live like this any longer. The old man wanted to deny him, but the young man worked very hard and concentrated. The grandfather became interested in what plans the boy had. He answered him by pushing up. Bom Khan plans to train and improve her body bit by bit. To begin with, he had to become stronger. He still didn't know so much, but he wanted to do so much. The old man thought, because the young man always had only one desire, to kill himself. Pushing up, he continued to speak, saying that he knew that people did not have a better opinion of him. The grandfather was surprised when he saw his grandson, who was able to push himself off the floor 7 times with his whole body. Big and strong jumps made without squatting also caused great surprise in the man. Grandpa would never have thought he could jump so fast. The only thing that confused him, why does he show it to him if he can do physical culture at home in peace? For him to show that he had changed. Leaning towards his grandfather, the boy asked him, saying that he had to tell him something. Misunderstanding was clearly expressed on the old man's face, but he agreed to listen to his grandson. He decided to tell him that Bom Khan was dead. Grandfather was beside himself with anger. Grandfather wanted to understand what he meant by this. He answered him that everything is as it is. The eldest heir of the great heavenly library is dead. He no longer needs to worry that he will die. The old man stood in a stupor, his face expressing complete denial of what was happening. The man tried to understand who this person was, who had moved into his grandson's body. The boy said in a drawn-out tone and with a smile on his face that he was the strongest man in the world. Looking at him again, the grandfather could not understand. It seemed that his child had lost his mind. The voice of the young man was heard, who asked him to drink the second last cup and not to drink any more. Another man answered him negatively. He wanted to finish this bottle. The younger brother said that it was too late. He asked to have a drink and go home. It was the third heir to the great heavenly library, Bom Buman. His brother, also the inheritor of Bom Yun's great heavenly library, scolded him, saying that he was preventing him from enjoying the taste of the wine, and it would be better if he poured more sauce on it. The middle one asked the younger one to tell him something. He was ready to answer his question. The brother became interested in where the boy went every morning. Bom Buman didn't expect such a question. Bom Yun went on to say that the kid is wasting his time, and for nothing, he really thinks that this guy has lost his memory and is only doing physical education to heal himself. The young man remembered how his brother laughed like a devil and tried to trick them again, and that he would end up backstabbing them anyway. The younger one really thinks he has changed. Grandfather also thinks so. The elder changes for the sake of his father. He smiled, saying that the little one goes to him to lick. The young man objected because it was not true. The guy asked to listen to him. He said that he had been a demon for a long time and would never change even if the heavens parted, and asked him not to forget that they almost lost their grandfather because of him. Bom Yun believed that calm and peace would only come when he finally died. Bom Bumon, in complete confusion and sadness, let out a heavy breath, lowering his head. The middle brother took him by the shoulder and told him not to be upset. He said that it had become somewhat scary here and offered to continue drinking in another place. The younger man grabbed him, asking him not to speak ill of the older man behind his back. He simply asked to come to him and talk. He assured him that the young man had indeed become a different man, and for the first time in a long time, the boy felt happy in his presence. Bom Yun became angry and began to lose his temper, ordering the younger to shut up immediately. Grabbing hold of the table, he began to shout at him because, as he said, he felt very good. Throwing away the extra object, the boy yelled at the younger man for calling him an older brother. Pulling him by force, the young man threatened to kill him personally if he said so even once. The visitors were worried, having left, watched everything that was happening. They stood with confused eyes and open mouths. No one dared to approach them. Suddenly, someone grabbed Bom Yun's shoulder. The guy was very wary. Turning his head back, the young man asked in confusion what they wanted and needed from him. A healthy, tall man stood behind him. He asked them to drink more quietly. The man shouted for them to joke more and at the same moment made a strong swing with his fist. During the fight, a large and powerful flash occurred. It was not clear what was happening. Having finally completed the blow, the man was very surprised when he saw that the boy was gone. A young man stood behind him from above. He asked the man if he thought that he would not escape because he was drunk. Hitting the man with all his might, the young man ordered him not to interfere in their conversation and to leave the place. The heathen lay face down on the floor, completely lacking the strength and desire to continue the fight. Smiling, Bom Yun said that if uncle is a weakling, then why did he get into a fight? The younger brother just silently watched what was happening all this time. He wondered how long he planned to hide. With anger in his voice, Bom Bumon asked the middle one if he was afraid of the elder one and demanded to stop these performances. The young man knew for sure that he did not want to go to him because of the fear of being deceived. Having sharply grabbed the child by the neck, the boy began to scold him loudly with very bad words. Looking sternly, with great aggression, Bom Yun denied everything, calling the elder a pitiful worm. Pushing his younger brother away with great force, he told him with a smile not to make him laugh. The guy decided to go to Bom Khan to show himself and others who he really is. He wanted to tear off his mask. The young man was doing push-ups in the middle of the forest in the dark. Standing nearby was Seonghwa, who kept the account of the young heir and supported the boy with all her might. The next exercise of the recovered person was rocking the press. His maid held his feet and continued to cheer up her master. The boy's third task was jumping in one place. The score was already up to 20 and the girl was watching the physical exercise. The maid was surprised that her master was able to master the rider's stance for more than 8 minutes. The young man stood firm in his position. Smiling, Seonghwa grabbed the war stick and motioned for him to increase his jump height. Suddenly, the maid gave a warning look and commanded Bom Khan to prepare for her attack. The young woman went on the attack and made a swing with a stick from below. It was very quick and unexpected. The library heir jumped very high to avoid being hit by his servant. The girl began to count the blows. Bom Khan did not expect such an exercise and therefore began to exercise more actively. Xianghua happily continued swinging the stick and invited the boy to repeat the exercise a few more times. Bom Khan was tired from the previous exercises and thought that 10 jumps were enough, so he begged his maid to stop. Xianghua had tears of joy in her eyes as she thought that her master cared about her and her fatigue. The girl assured the boy that she was not tired at all and she could swing the stick all night without getting tired. At these words, the tired young man made a surprised expression on his face. Bom Khan finally got tired and fell to the ground. The situation was depressed. The young woman stood accusingly over the young man. Due to severe pain, the young man rose to his feet. He had no right to rest and therefore, leaning on his hands, he raised his body. Xianghua thought her master had decided to stand on his hands. She grabbed the boy's legs to make him stand. While performing this exercise, Bom Khan noticed unknown figures hiding in the bushes in the forest. He turned to his maid, who continued to hold him. The girl heard her master, believing that he wanted to rest. But the young man asked her to let him go because someone was coming to them. As soon as the boy got to his feet, an unknown man in a blue kimono appeared in front of the young people. The strange figure was the middle brother, who looked very drunk and held a bottle of relaxing drink in his hand. His younger brother stood behind him with sad eyes. The man remembered that the drunk guy's name was Bom Yun. Only he could allow himself to insult the heir of the heavenly library with such impudence. The old man in the body of Bom Khan decided that this was the perfect moment to learn some insolence. Xianghua thought that her master did not remember the middle brother and reminded him of the name of the second heir of the library. The eldest shouted the boy's name in surprise because he did not expect that his relative would behave very insolently and insult everyone around him. The maid asked the boy not to shout loudly. Insulted by the boy due to his drunkenness, Bom Yun froze in place and questioned the former sick young man for his rudeness. Bom Khan shook his head sadly because he did not expect his younger brother to be among the fashionistas who consider it the norm to drink until the pig squeals. To this rudeness, the drunkard objected that the boy himself wanted to end his life many times and face death. He also noticed that his elder was behaving strangely a few days later. Bom Yun poked a finger at the recent cripple. He accused him of not losing his memory and trying to trick everyone into harming himself again. After asking a trivial question about the wishes of the family, the middle one continued to annoy the main heir of the library. The wish, according to the opinion of the drunk guy, was that the older brother would finally end his life independently. Bom Khan could not stand such rudeness on his part. The young man's anger knew no bounds. His face immediately turned black with anger and his eyes were hidden under the shadows of his hair. Suddenly, Bom Yun stopped teasing. He asked the relative for his facial expression in his direction. The older brother's face radiated confidence and a sly smile. He assured the drunkard that he knew nothing about him. Xianghua noticed that the heirs were insulting each other again. Bom Khan asked his maid to give him a stick. The girl's face immediately turned pale. She did not understand the expediency of this order at all. In a rough tone, the young man indicated the urgency of his request and gave the martial arts master a stern look. The snap of the order was heard by Xianghua, and she ran towards the counter for one of the staffs for her master. Bom Khan grabbed his weapon and rubbed his hands in front of the drunk. The tension between the two brothers reached its peak. The young man noted that any instrument of death may look ordinary, but in the hands of the mightiest warrior, very useful and powerful. The mention of all the training in the boy's body made him think and understand about his great capabilities. The hard training paid off. The grandfather's techniques, which he used in his past life, were realistic to reproduce in battle. Bom Yun didn't consider the staff a formidable weapon and only smiled at his older brother's possible success. Bom Khan threw the stick on his back, made a demonstrative gesture with his hand in his direction, challenging the brat to fight. He decided to give a demonstration of his capabilities to his relative. A dark aura of malice hung over the drunkard. He just looked at his older brother's audacity. Xianghua had sweat dripping down her face because she was really worried about her master, who had only recently recovered. The girl asked the young man not to get into a fight because Bom Yun also studied martial arts. In response to this, the senior heir of the library ordered not to interfere with the confrontation. Suddenly, the boy decided to turn to the 4 guards who were hiding and watching everything in the bushes. The guards were warned not to interfere in the fight between the brothers. People in the dark did not expect to be seen at all. Manhwa pointed out to the young master that the guards were on the other side. It was not important for the young man because his appeal had to be heard. Bom-yoon pointedly crunched his bones in front of the senior heir and reprimanded the circus in front of the servants. The fight started. The condition of the fight was such that the middle man would call his opponent a brother if the young man with the stick struck even 1 blow. The drunkard moved towards Bom-kan, putting his fist above his head. The guy was adamant. The young man grabbed the weapon with both hands. He looked at Bom-yoon confidently and straight in the eyes. As soon as the man dressed in a dark kimono moved 2 steps away, the young man quickly swung his pole from above. The opponent only believed that he would easily deflect the blow and, disdainfully, because of his self-confidence, smiled. Bom-yoon felt a sharp pain in her shoulder area. No one could have expected such a turn. It turned out that the blow was so heavy that the middle brother was thrown a long distance and the staff broke in half. All the air from the drunkard's body, under the influence of pressure, came out. The boy let out a cry of pain from such manipulations. He sat down under a tree. The young man only believed in the impossibility of such a blow from his relative and wondered how he did it. Bom-kan stood over his opponent in a victory pose. He asked about the drunkard's sobriety and demanded to be called his elder brother. The cripple called the young man as he had asked, but only added a curse word to what was said. Being called by such a word was not a problem for Bom-yoon because he believed that the elder heir was like that. Leaning against a tree trunk, he rose to his feet. The middle brother said that it is better to die than to call the winner of a fight that way. In response to this, Bom-kan joked that his relative had not sobered up and swung the remainder of the pole. The boy hit the loser on the arm with a maddening speed. He could not stand further insolence. Thousands of blows continued towards the drunkard. With a maddened smile, the young man arranged a physical battle and did not let the opponent rest. Manhwa called out desperately to her master. She repeatedly begged him to stop because she could not bear such a sight. The younger brother finally spoke up and asked not to inflict mutilations of this nature. Meanwhile, the middle brother adopted a defensive stance to avoid further pain. He still did not believe what was happening. The drunkard did not understand how his elder became so strong in such a short period of time, because recently he could not even walk properly. Bom-yoon's hands were completely covered in wounds because the young man was very active in defending himself. He looked at his opponent with a surprised look. Pondering, the young man remembered that his younger brother grabbed his hand and said how radically their relative had changed and how happy everyone was in his presence. The boy clenched his teeth aggressively. He never believed that his elder would ever change and stop mutilating himself. The dark aura thickened over Bom-yoon again. He was gathering energy for the unknown and powerful trick he was about to perform. Woo-gon in the boy's body looked at the young man carefully. He remembered the technique his opponent had mastered. Blue energy wrapped around the drunkard's hand. The veins on the arms were filled with blood and hinted at the power of the attack. The middle brother declared that he would no longer trust his relative and performed the twisted kick. The energy rushed towards the opponent's stomach. The boy in the white coat only looked in surprise at these efforts. A sudden, mysterious smile appeared on Bom-kan's face. The second heir only looked in fear at the elder's reaction. The boy instantly turned away with the help of an unknown technique. He emphasized that there is nothing to do in the upbringing of his brother. The young man was behind his opponent in a second. He mysteriously looked at his weapon and decided to contribute to the rush of drunkards. With an amused expression on his face, Bom-kan announced that he would follow a different method of raising his steadfast relative. Bom-yoon turned to her older brother in fear. He tried to understand what technique would be performed in his direction. The edge of the stick swept rapidly to the genitals of the middle. It was immediately clear that the shot would clearly hit the target. A physical attack was committed. The drunkard's face instantly turned pale, white. As an analogy, as a result of this blow, everyone remembered making an egg from which an omelette was made. The blow to the genital organ was inflicted by Bom-yoon. The pain was so unbearable that the boy screamed very loudly. The middle brother fell to the ground and twisted. 3 other figures looked at the crippled man with understanding and surprise. The younger brother looked frightened at the result of the fight. He worriedly turned to the drunkard. Bom Yoon was lying on the ground curled up. The elder stood by him with a stick. The younger watched. Bom Boomin, in a panic, screamed loudly, trying to understand if the middle brother was alive. The eldest of the trio forbade the little one to approach the young man because he had not finished yet. The boy was in shock. He thought that his was completely inadequate and unmanageable. Turning away from the pain, he considered his brother not a good person. The young man could not even ask to stop because he was screaming in pain. The boy tried to understand what he should do now. Seonghwa tried to stop her master. Grabbing him from the back, she asked him to finish because he would kill him. The young man was helpless after the impact. Bom Khan chased the girl away, saying that he would teach this heathen. Bom Yoon addressed him as an older brother. The maid intervened in the situation, and it was necessary to take advantage of this. Despite his pride, he did not want to die. The young man begged not to touch him, admitting that he was wrong. The boy could not believe that he had to beg for mercy. Bom Khan tried to understand who had taught him to talk to elders like that. Standing in front of him on his knees, the middle man understood. His brother had never behaved like that. The grandfather told his grandson that the boy thought he was the strongest warrior in the world, but he thought he was a little out of his mind. The old man asked to treat him more gently. Remembering the words spoken by his grandfather, the young man said that his elder brother is the strongest warrior in the world. At that moment, absolute silence reigned around. No one could say a word. Bom Khan burst out laughing. Smiling, he said that he had completely lost his sense of smell, but he still needed to be added. The boy ordered Bom Yoon to kneel. He was in complete confusion. The elder quarreled with his brother and thought that he was not taking his words properly. Swinging his stick, he ordered him to get on all fours again. The boy had to obey the elder. Bom Khan asks how many strokes he wants. The young man answers that 5. Not listening to his brother, he decides that 7 will be the right time. Every stroke he wanted to carve on his heart. Swinging with all his strength, remembering all his skills, the boy began to do a backspin. With each new, full of aggression, blow, a powerful 25-fold force was used. The young man was biting his lips hard, holding back screams from severe pain. He was in hellish pain. Back home after what happened, Bom Yoon collapsed on the bed. There was no living space on it. The boy sadly pondered why his brother allowed himself to beat people like some dogs. At that moment, he remembered how he called him Big Brother. Although for the sake of survival, he called it. The young man thought that many years had passed since he had called him that. Bom Yoon remembers how when he was little, he always ran after Bom Khan and called him Big Brother. The young man was known as a genius and a scholar, and he respected him greatly. When the life of the whole family turned into hell due to the elder's fault, the boy hated him with every particle of his soul. In the depths of his soul, he believed that his brother would become the former, but time after time, the young man killed all hope until he finally did it. The young man's thoughts were finally interrupted by a younger boy. Bom Boomin quickly entered the room. Bom Yoon couldn't believe that a man who had been living in the state of a vegetable for many years had beaten him. He thought it was impossible at all. Bom Khan became very strong. He cried and asked his brother for forgiveness. The boy begged him to forgive him because before that he did not understand what a good person he was. The young man said that he saw the average from a completely different side because he allowed the older to beat him, thereby allowing him to feel invincible. Bom Yoon understood that he was wrong. According to the boy, the young man allowed himself to be hit on the back again and again, but that was not the main thing. The boy did not understand what the little one was saying. He got angry with the younger one because he was talking complete nonsense. It pissed him off that he thought he did. Bom Boomin agreed. It was impossible, wasn't it? From the side, his blows looked weak. This meant only one thing. Bom Khan was stronger. With a tearful face, the little one asked about Bom Yoon's genital condition. Tears flowed from his eyes when he saw how the elder got there. After analyzing and evaluating the situation, the boy realized that the abilities of the eldest heir are limitless. The thought of whether he was really the genius of the great heavenly library troubled the young man. Booman distracted him by asking about the punch. The younger brother, with tears in his eyes, decided that he would not just leave it like that. Yun didn't understand what he wanted to do. With visible aggression and anger in his eyes, he decided to take revenge for his middle grandson. Hua was delighted. At first she was afraid for the master, but then she worried about her brother. Despite everything, Khan was not very pleased. He was upset that he could not overcome the drunkard for a long time. From the inside, the components and structures have not yet fully connected with the young man's body. This meant that his spirit, energy, and consciousness did not fully interact with matter. The young man's soul is now dead, his life experiences and memories also gone with him. The man thought that it would be good to at least somehow try to regain the boy's memory. Xianghua assured that the younger brother would not come in the morning because the master had beaten the middle one. He confidently assured that he would come. Boomun was a handsome and intelligent boy. Of all the people he had met in his life, he had never met such a perceptive young man as the little one. The maid did not understand his words because he rarely left the library. He managed to get away by saying that he had read about many in books. The girl laughed, saying that the characters in the books are not real people. At that moment, the younger brother swung open the gate. Xianghua and Khan were surprised at Booman's arrival. No one expected this. He began to shout that the elder is a thief. The behavior of such a kind and handsome boy was completely incomprehensible. The boy did not understand how the older brother could do such a thing, because the middle one allowed him to beat him. The young man asked the child to calm down, but he refused. Having taken out the nunchucks, he decided to take revenge several times more for what the boy did to others. The elder was surprised that someone would seriously use such a weapon. He did not know that the younger was learning to use them. Xianghua wondered if Khan would respond in any way to such behavior. Booman started swinging his weapon with all his might. At this time, his middle brother was standing behind him. Yun hit the boy on the head, scolding him for telling him that nunchucks should not be used. The girl was in complete shock. She thought that the two of them wanted to attack the owner. The young man came to say good morning to his older brother. He asked him if he slept well. Yesterday's situation finally put the brains of the middle brother. The young man replied that he slept well, just like him. Yun laughed, saying that it was all thanks to his own work. He drew particular attention to the bruise under his eyes. The middle boy suggested that the older one go somewhere. Grandfather and his husband were sitting in the room. The grandfather greeted his grandchildren. The young man greeted his grandfather, while Khan tried to understand what kind of person was lying in the bed. The man greeted the heir. He said that he had not seen him for a long time, but he heard that the boy had become much better. It was Yun and Boomon's dad, and his uncle was Gan. Khan agreed with the adult. He was chained to the bed. It was not clear whether there were no healthy people left in the family of guardians of the heavenly library. The man felt happy. Uncle could not think that he would see the elder like this. The young man was also happy, but at the same time he clearly felt how weak the man's hands were. The boy asked his uncle what disease he had. He apologized, saying that he had lost his memory. The adult, exhaling heavily, fearfully, turned his frightened gaze away from Khan. The man tried to wriggle out, saying that it was not a physical ailment at all, but a spiritual one. He was afraid of him. He pretended not to understand and asked again as if it was because of Yun. The uncle agreed, saying that his son drinks every day and asked him for help if he gets drunk again. Khan agreed, but after apologizing, decided to leave. Yun asked if the elder was going to his room and, after making sure of this, asked to go with him. Khan agreed. The young men walked calmly, actively talking on various topics. It was like a walk between two loved ones. At one point, the boy thought. After meeting with Gan, he only became more sure that all the troubles in the family of guardians of the great heavenly library started with him. He recalled how the man, with fear and obvious panic, was afraid to look into his eyes. Most of the residents reacted to him in this way. Not only his uncle was afraid of him, The boy scared everyone. His thoughts troubled him. He was interested in the question of whether he would be able to recover his memories if he revealed this secret. At this time, Bom Yoon tried to call her brother. The boy was worried about what Bom Khan was thinking about. In his opinion, he looked focused and gloomy, but the young man replied that it was nothing special. Bom Yoon asked if he remembers their childhood, but the boy did not remember the present, and even more so his childhood. The middle one reminded the elder that when he was lost in his thoughts, he always secluded himself in the library. Bom Yoon and Bom Boomun knew he could be found right there. The young man said that when he changed, he immediately stopped leaving the room and never entered the library again. He hoped to continue the conversation, but Bom Khan interrupted him, saying that he would now find the key to the memories. The young man thanked his brother for the conversation and ran. Bom Yoon stood confused in complete shock. The grandfather told his son everything that happened. The man finally believed him, saying that he was completely unrecognizable. Bom Gan cried. He will finally be able to breathe into his full chest as if a mountain has fallen from his shoulders. They hoped that Bom Khan's memories would never return to him. Bom Yoon ran into the room saying that an irreparable and unexpected tragedy had occurred. The old man said that the older brother went to the library in order to get his memories back. Grandfather and father were in shock. They could not understand what was happening and believe what they heard. Bom Khan flung the door open, stepping into a huge library. It was the same part of the world in which he spent the most time. He hoped to find clues that would definitely help him regain the boy's memory. The library was dirty, all the shelves were covered in a thick layer of dust. It has clearly not been cleaned here for a long time. Looking at one of the shelves, Bom Khan was surprised. One of the listed books was not level. Taking out the textbook, he saw only one small inscription, Winter, on its cover. There was noticeably less dust on this book, which indicated that it had been read relatively recently, and it may not have been a coincidence that it was turned upside down. When the young man opened the textbook, something small and papery flew out of it and fell to the floor. Bom Khan decided to pick up what fell, bending down, cupping the pieces of paper in his hands. The young man collected a whole pile of strange and incomprehensible letters. He began to look at them. The dates were different, but the letters were addressed to the same person. The sender was a certain Chu Zhang. It turned out that the boy corresponded with someone, and perhaps this person was involved in the transmigration of souls. The young man decided to read them later. Putting the book back, he wondered if there were any other clues that might have been hidden so he hadn't noticed them. Unexpectedly, the books themselves began to fall out one by one, making a complete mess. Bom Khan could not understand what was happening. The bookshelf began to fall on top of him. At one point he realized it was all an illusion. In fact, the textbooks never fell. It turned out that when the boy put the book back, he managed to activate the spatial trap. Bom Khan understood why the book was called Winter. Everything around him was covered in snow. The man could not believe it. It was really very cold. It all looked very realistic. The young man's hands, starting from the fingertips, began to quickly and completely freeze. Unexpectedly for him, someone unknown with concern asked him if he was cold. Returning to the heard voice, the boy felt like a little boy again. His mother looked at him, gently and with care, asking her son to hold out his hands. She was shocked by how her tiny hands turned red from the surrounding cold. The woman was sure that he would freeze and insisted on going back. The son objected to her, asking her not to worry because for a real man, this is a complete trifle. His mother laughed at him, saying that men get cold too. She knew he was a homeboy. The mother decided to give her warm mittens to her son, which she took off from her tender hands. The boy did not want to take them, fearing that his mother would freeze. The woman replied that he still wouldn't go home without finishing the snowmen, but if he was worried about her, they could hurry. The mother had a question why the boy decided to mold 3 snowmen. Smiling and looking at the snow figures, the woman thought that these 3 snowmen were her family. Laughing, she said that they were very similar to them. She wanted to show it to his dad. The mother began to call her beloved to show the snowmen. Bom Khan begged her to stop and not tell her father yet. Already as an adult, the young man walked past the snow figures, smiling and remembering this moment of his childhood. It seemed to Bom Khan that it should have been a good, warm family memory. Suddenly, The boy was thrown into another period of time. The weather there was much warmer. The woman asked if the man had seen the plum blossoms. Dad said yes. He immediately remembered her. The father approached the mother, asking how she was feeling. She replied that everything is fine. In fact, the wife felt happy because she could look at the spring blossoms with her husband. Dad suggested that we go together to look at the blossoms when spring comes. The woman agreed to his proposal. The mother, sitting in bed smiling, gently asked her son to come to her. Bom Khan started crying. The woman asked what happened to him and why he was crying. Stretching her hand to his face, she said that she loved him very much. Suddenly, for unknown reasons, tears appear in the young man's eyes. He couldn't control it. Wiping away all the drops, he managed to understand. The memories left in this body returned. While continuing to be in the illusion, you could remember everything. Slowly and unrealistically, drops of liquid began to disappear from the young man's fingers. Bom Khan seems to have seen another event. She confused and alarmed him. The grandfather was on his knees crying and asking someone why he just died. The old man looked broken. Now the boy understood what had happened. It has been 10 days since his mother died. The man aged in a matter of days. Death broke his heart and destroyed his will to live. There were 3 people in the room, but the 4th came to observe the situation. The middle and younger brothers abruptly and unexpectedly ran into the library with their father. The boys started calling the young man, asking if he was all right. They were very worried about him. Bom Khan did not expect such a turn and was quite frightened by their presence in the library. The artificial world began to collapse with the appearance of men. The little boy, smiling, gradually dissolved. The young man couldn't stop the tears from the memories and emotions experienced in the illusion. It was sunny and warm outside. The boy was standing in front of a large blossoming plum tree. Looking out from under the trees, the baby called his mother and father. A grown-up Bom Khan stood behind him. The plum blossomed very nicely, but the son was never able to find his parents. They told him that they would watch the blossoms together when spring came. The boy thought that perhaps they had already watched the bloom from another place. Raising the sharp tip of the ritual knife to his neck, the young man decided to join them. The middle brother tried to pull the boy out of the illusion. He asked the elder to stop. Bom Yun rolled his brother to the ground and threw the knife away from them. The young man loomed over Bom Khan. The young man was very afraid for his life. He asked the boy why he decided to do this. The eldest heir calmly replied to the middle one that he was going where he should be. Finally, he remembered everything from Bom Khan's life. The body began to merge with the man's soul. After regaining consciousness, the boy heard many worried voices. He tried to understand what was happening. Middle and younger brothers, uncle, grandfather, and his personal maid stood over him. The young man tried to get up. Relatives asked him if he was normal and worried about him. Laughing, Bom Khan joked that the relatives had finally decided to come and read books. The younger brother appreciated the joke. The middle one said that he lost consciousness and they were very scared. The grandfather, with a confused expression on his face, asked if his grandson was feeling well now. The guy replied that everything is fine. The young man just activated the trap and went to the snowfield. Bom Khan asked his loved ones if he could try to get all the memories back. Seonghwa, Bom Chon, Bom Yun, and Bom Boomin stood in a stupor, not knowing how to respond. The young man had a sharp and unexpected headache. At this moment, everyone became very alert. Smiling, the boy asked if this always happened when memories came back. The girl cried and got angry, saying that Mister's jokes had gone too far. Bom Khan addressed the maid. The young man also spoke to the middle and younger brothers. They responded to him without understanding anything. For the final, he turned to the old grandfather. He just stood there silently, looking at his grandson. The boy replied to everyone that everything is fine with him and that his relatives should not worry about him. Bom Khan promised his relatives that he would no longer lose consciousness in such situations. The maid, grandfather, Bom Yun, and Bom Boomin started to cry with happiness. They did not believe in their own gift from fate. The old man, full of joyful feelings, said that now, finally, he would be able to die peacefully. It was the first morning since Bom Khan's memories came back. The day started very well. The young man felt so rested and invigorated. His body was light and his mind pure. The boy smiled and understood. Now he will be able to realize what he wanted for a long time. Opening the window, he turned to one of the guards. The young man had a small request. Bom Khan was going to meditate. The young man asked not to let anyone into the room until he left it himself. The boy also emphasized that this request also applies to his grandfather. The servant listened to his order in confusion. It was not a very good answer. It seemed that they were still worried about what they had done in the past. The young man closed the door. He understood that there is nothing you can do to help here. Only gradually gaining trust is the way out. The boy slowly sat down on the floor. Circulating the energy at that moment was the most important thing. Now that the man had regained Bom Khan's memories, his soul had completely merged with his body. It became finally clear. The boy was absolutely not involved in the magical and mysterious exchange. There were many problems with the letters he exchanged with a certain Chu Yang, but the young man had no involvement in the soul exchange process. Maybe someone else did it, but then it was hard to know which person was capable of it. Because of this, it was necessary to focus on the return of the previous power level. He has done this before. Another 5, a maximum of 10 years, and the man will be able to turn to the previous possibilities. With the help of elixirs, herbs, and mystical creatures, this could be done faster. Fortunately, this place had a positive impact on development. The Great Heavenly Library was famous for its impregnable fortress of Zhanggu. Its height was equal to the mountains. In each zone, there were traps built into the wall, even in the arches. There was no place in this world safer than this. In addition, this ancient family had a long history. The man thought that if Bom Khan wanted, he would buy mountain ginseng, or the root of the fleece flower. He wanted to take advantage of what he could get his hands on. He did not want to be just a son of the Great Heavenly Library. The man very much wanted others to call him Hu Gon instead of this young man's name. While Bom Khan was thinking, while he was meditating, the heads of his loved ones could be seen in the window. Grandfather, middle and younger brothers, together with their father, watched the young man. He couldn't understand what they were doing there. The old man could not understand why the young man's face looked so radiant. Uncle was also worried about it. Before that, the skin was pale and rough. Now the tone of the face has become so light and even better than that of girls. The old man said that of course it was good, but he was still worried about his grandson. The younger brother remarked to the man that he spoke very loudly. At the most tense moment, the middle brother unexpectedly and loudly sneezed. Everyone was in shock. Laughing at the surprise, Bom Yun apologized to the men. The men were unhappy with what had happened. Bom Khan opened the window abruptly. Relatives stood in front of him, staring with open mouths. The young man turned to his grandfather and uncle. He also did not forget about the middle and younger boys. Bom Chon was worried that the child had missed breakfast due to meditation. He asked his grandson if he was worried about anything. Despite what he had told him yesterday, the old man still didn't believe it. Considering Bom Khan's actions, this was not news. The guy started squatting down and making swings. Grandpa and Bom Boomin were very surprised. The young man assured that he had really changed and he managed to regain some of his memories. The old man became nervous, remembering the young man's past. He felt great fear for the child. Bom Khan has not changed his mind since yesterday. The boy assured that he should calm down. Grandfather could not hold back his tears. He was very happy because his grandson was able to completely change himself. The brothers embraced the uncle and the old man. The men began to cry. The young man watched them from the sidelines. For Bom Khan, the atmosphere was strange. He was trying to figure out if he should cry with them. After the boy regained his memories, he was able to understand why the Great Heavenly Library is considered one of the Great Three for a reason. At a glance, it was clear that more than 100 magical stamps were placed on the library. The most important thing was the way they were applied. Thinking about his knowledge and skills, the young man decided to turn to his grandfather with a request. Bom Khan said that he should be spoken to. He asked the old man to come into the room. According to the memories of the young man, there are 1 or 2 rotten places in the library. In order to return the room to its former state, it is necessary to remove the rotten roots. The grandson asked his grandfather for a healing solution to speed up the process of restoring his body and soul. The old man agreed to his request. He wanted to do everything to help the boy. The man gave him the ginseng and the many-flowered bitter gourd, which were in his supplies. Grandfather wanted to choose the best herbs himself and send them to Bom Khan. The old man decided to go in search. The young man agreed with him. Standing outside the door were Bom Yun and Bom Bumon. The older brother was surprised by their presence. The guy decided on this empty topic. He wanted to tell them something. The young men were interested in what would happen next. Molodik ordered the medium to find out the state of the library, document it, and report to him. This applied not only to the state from the inside, but also from the outside, including famous families who lived nearby. Bom Yun replied that there was no need. All important information about family residents in the district was with the manager. As soon as he returns, the brother will be able to ask him about it. The husband recently left, so you can find out all the necessary information in 10 days. The guy had memories of Guak Do. He's someone you can trust. He was in charge of the library while the family was devastated by grief. However, his trust in the manager was very great. Did the second heir not know about the precious property? The young man interrupted his older brother, saying that this was not all. If he did not mind, the boy wanted to arrange a competition with him, because the young man had already honed his fighting skills and he was wondering how much. Bom Khan took the stick from Seonghwa's hands and ordered the middle brother to get on his hands and knees. He began to beat his brother with a stick, asking who owned the great heavenly library, him or the manager. Did he get so drunk that he forgot who he was? Bom Yun promised to implement what the young man said. The boy called him weak and ordered him to leave. The young man turned to Bom Bumon. The little one has a talent for applying magical stamps since childhood. Bom Khan asked the young man if he knew how many seals were placed on their family. The younger brother looked very confused. If you count, there were around 100 of them. The older boy ordered the boy to get down on all fours to the floor. Bom Bumon grabbed his leg. He asked to forgive him this time and promised to work even harder. Bom Khan still made him strike a pose. The young man hit the little one and said that there were 120 of them. Regardless of his age, you can't treat family like that. The maid stood with her mouth open. She was afraid that it would be her turn next. The older brother gave him 3 days. It was necessary to check everyone who works for this place, as well as check all stamps and mechanisms. If something needs urgent repair, you must report it immediately. It was also worth checking the condition of the devices. Bom Bumon agreed to the order with tears in his eyes. The young man turned to Seonghwa. The girl immediately answered the man that she would try her best. He could delegate everything. There was a brush, paper and ink on the table, as well as a glass with a hot drink. Bom Khan ordered the maid to write under dictation. He took a sip of tea from the glass. The girl was confused. She could not understand why she had to do this. The young man reminded her how Seonghwa had promised to do whatever the master wanted. The first sentence of the letter should have been an appeal to the Honourable Chu Yang. The maid began to draw letters. The girl was surprised. If this link was specifically for you, then it would be better to write it yourself, because how will he believe if the letters look different? Bom Khan mentioned that he too has a different font. This worried him very much and did not give him peace. He has already tried several times to repeat the boy's manuscripts, but all in vain. Even if it looked similar, the details were different if you looked closely. Written letters are like a fingerprint, they cannot be repeated. Before sending the letters, the girl will inform her grandfather about it. The young man did not want to explain to him what had happened to his writing, so it would be better if another person wrote for him. The man got out of the way by saying that he just wanted to see how she writes. There was nothing wrong with that, because he wanted to invite Chu Yang to the library with this link. The maid's eyes shone with happiness. She wanted to see her husband again. The host asked if she liked him. Seonghwa replied that, of course it was. Pan was incredibly courageous and faithful to her. She considered him the coolest in the whole world. The girl promised that she would write well. If Bom Khan had started with that, she would have agreed without a second thought. However, it became clear from the young man's correspondence with this man that the latter was not in his right mind. If the maid knew the horrible things they wrote to each other, she wouldn't think he was cool anymore. By the way, the manager was supposed to return in 10 days. He was a funny person. An unknown man was wiping the pots with plants while simultaneously talking to Mr. Even if the world changes, the air will remain the same. He must have decided to play everyone like last time. The stranger was waiting for this so that he could finally support the young man. So much time has passed that the man is simply tired of waiting for it. He lifted the pot with the plant in both hands. There was a big and bright magical explosion. The vase shattered into small pieces. The unknown man realized that he still needed to help the heir to the great heavenly library. Bom Khan sits on the floor meditating. An inexplicable aroma spreads when touched. The man can no longer tolerate this stench. He hadn't smelled such an unpleasant smell in a long time. It couldn't even be compared to the foul smell from the mouths of old people or a corpse that had been lying in a garbage dump for a week. He didn't want to sit and inhale it anymore. The man decided to immediately get up from the floor. The young man restored one of the 3 means of self-defense: whole blood. It was the use of one's own blood. With this method, you can easily repel enemy attacks on energy points. At the moment when the opponent attacks, it can be used for a counterattack. The young man thought about his strength, but his thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Although he didn't train that much, he was satisfied that he was able to get such a state of blood. Bom Khan asked if it was the maid who came. Seonghwa opened the door, asking if her master had called her. The stench wafted into the room even faster. The young man asked where this unpleasant aroma came from, but the girl herself did not know. She was confused and trying to understand what to do. The maid was upset because this terrible smell could eat away at her delicate skin. We had to stop talking and run away from here. The owner and the young woman went outside, but the stench still dominated the fresh air. He praised Seonghwa, saying there was still a little left. They walked covering their noses. In front of them stood 2 brothers. The elder wanted to know what was the matter. The middle one was confused and tried to explain what had happened. The fact was that the younger man was fixing the east gate, and it seems that he spoiled the whole air in the library. Bom Bumon disagreed with Bom Yoon's words. This magic move was rarely used and the protective seal was broken. Because of this, he decided to repair everything. The young man wanted to prove that he was not lying, because there were many people with him. He asked his brother to believe him. The kid wouldn't tell a lie. Although Bom Boomin has weaknesses, the boy has never cheated. Especially when it came to magic, he was better than him. No matter how much Bom Khan tried to achieve success, nothing worked. The older one ordered the younger one to check everything again and try to find the source of the unpleasant smell, and the middle one called to help the little one. The brothers agreed. The young man himself quickly decided to leave because he had other things to do. The boys could not understand where he was going. It was a street filled with a large number of people, which was not far away. He did not run away from this terrible aroma, but decided to find out what happened to the world of Murim after the death of the head. The young man did not know anyone present. Since before Bom Khan fell into depression, he communicated with many famous scientists and writers. It seemed to him that he would be able to meet one of them here. The guy didn't expect anything else, so he suggested Seonghwa go out for a drink. The maid agreed. The man and the girl visited some institution. The young woman wondered if some strange plant could produce such a scent. He replied that he did not know. Strange persons were sitting at another table. They were poor soldiers. The young woman turned to these men, asking if these poor people knew her master. Bom Khan calmly continued to tell Seonghwa about the book and its contents. He did not pay attention to others. The maid was surprised that the heir to the library had read an incredibly large number of books. A woman brought drinks to their table. The young man was very surprised when he turned his head in the opposite direction. Opposite sat a company of a small number of people. He remembered that he was familiar with them. They were Jang Yi, the heir of the House of Burning Loyalty, and Seo Moon Hong, the 3rd member of the Soman clan. There were no memories of the girl's personality. They are not close, but this is enough to clarify the events. Although he was old, he did not want to spoil their fun right away. It was necessary to allocate time for young people to chat among themselves. He enjoyed watching it. Someone started shouting to bring the chief. a mosquito was found in someone's soup. The situation attracted the attention of the maid and the master. The man loudly scolded the manager for wanting to deceive him and hide the insect at the very bottom. He angrily showed the container with the problem, but argued because he found it when he had already eaten the entire portion. The chief began to apologize. The cooks were very alert, but could not spot the mosquito. They decided not to charge for the order and instead gave him a bottle of wine. The man aggressively refused. The chief asked what Mr. wanted then. The man needed 10 silver coins. There was no other way out. He only needed money, because otherwise the matter remained unfinished and open. The manager tried to justify himself. The man ordered to stop talking and to compensate him for eating a dish with an insect. He threatened the boss with the end of his restaurant. Such bad people were and are everywhere. The heir exhaled and called the maid to him. Unexpectedly, the man began to threaten the owner. Weed took out his sword and put it at his throat. Seonghwa walked up to these two people. She decided to turn to them and pay attention. The girl said that she knew about the soup, which upset her husband very much. Her master asked her to give him 10 silver coins. Bum Khan calmly continued to eat. He didn't hate it when someone made noise during his dinner. The maid suggested not to organize a pogrom. She asked to take the money and calm down. The man looked at the girl with a smile. Seonghwa smiled back, holding a bag of valuables in her hands. He looked at Mr. The young man was elegantly dressed, had a white face and a slender body. His body did not look strong to the guards, especially if everything was different, he would not have offered the money. The scoundrel decided that 10 silver coins were not enough. He wanted 30 already. The girl silently smiled at him. Not only did the man forget his place, but he was also greedy. The pagan was confused by surprise. Bom Khan smiled. He wanted to hear Seonghwa's personal opinion about this situation. The young maid was completely in agreement with the heir. After these words, the girl smiled. The man got angry because of what he heard. The heathen was going to attack the heir. At that moment, the young girl grabbed the scoundrel by the neck with all her might and twisted his arms. Seonghwa pushed the pagan into the air with her palm so hard that he flew to the ceiling. After recovering, the man began to threaten the girl with violence and called her bad words. The girl did not want to listen to his delusions, so she immediately made a powerful swing with her leg. The maid hit him so that the pagan flew into the street along with the windows of the restaurant. Bom Khan praised the young man and ordered him to go. She gave the money to the owner of the establishment as compensation. The eldest heir was already descending the stairs. Seonghwa ran and asked Mr. to wait for her. As soon as she caught up with the boy, she saw something strange. The girl tried to understand what was happening. Several stocky men stood opposite. One of them began to speak. He couldn't believe that someone had bathed their Gwanghwa sect brother in the mud. A pagan with a blindfold began to look for the person who did it. His expression was menacing. Bom Khan replied that it was his maidservant and immediately held out his hand to her. She did not expect this. Seonghwa knew that she should protect the master, be his shadow, but the girl should hold on. The young woman ordered them to watch their words and asked if they knew who he was at all. The maid said that the bastard started the fight first because he was rude to her master. She ordered them to go away. Ilis ordered the men to seize Seonghwa, but the girl was not lost and was ready to defend herself. The visitors heard some noise coming from the street. They decided to look out the window to see all the events. There was a fight at the entrance. The four young people were confused by what was happening, but they were more surprised by another fact. One of the participants in this mess was the eldest heir to the Great Heavenly Library, Bom Khan. It is mentioned how Seonghwa fought off the bad man with all her strength with just one swing of a leg, Bom Khan thought. Everyone was outnumbered, but the maid possessed good military skills. With the help of the four guards, the body with the fight was quickly finished, with no damage on his side. Two boys approached the young man. It was the second heir of the House of Burning Loyalty, Zhang E, and the third member of the Soman family, Seo Moon Hong. The boys realized that they had not seen each other for a long time. The young man began to say that his health had greatly improved, so he decided to take a walk for the first time in a long time, and was glad to see their happy faces. The bodyguards themselves were able to deal with this conflict. The couple decided not to stand still, but to sit down at the table and chat quietly. The young men asked the girls if they would mind going with them. The beauties immediately agreed to the proposal. Girlfriends talked to each other. Is this the same heir to the Great Heavenly Library? It was the daughter of the owner of the White House, Myo Garyong, and the daughter of the Zhongwall master, Bang Gyo-in. For young women, he was better in life than he was described in gossip. They wanted to go with them to find out about the boy. Seonghwa skillfully, better than the bodyguards, dealt with all the representatives of the sect. At the moment when the maid turned her back to the master, one of the scoundrels punched her in the face. Recently, due to Hugon, there is a full adder around, although not so noticeable. Everyone should be more careful. Perhaps they simply could not believe in their leader, but he simply appeared from obscurity. The boy could not believe that the head was dead. It was said that his skill reached the heavens. He was unmatched in all of Murima, not to mention the demonic cult. The young man believed that his only negative was that he was fat, but a larger number said that he still looked cool. He thought so too. Bom Khan replied that he had excellent taste. Bang Gyo-in talked about the fact that even though the rumors seemed unbelievable, after this adventure with the robbers, she started to believe it. The girl did not think that the young man would be interested in the state of the alliance and Hugon's character. Looking at his reflection, Bom Khan wondered if there was a place in this world that was not a part of Murim. No matter where you are, you will still remain in the alliance. It was already dark. It was an honor to spend the evening with such wonderful and honest individuals like them. The young man decided to leave. One of the boys has to go to his mother tomorrow. He was sorry that they had met so late. The heir hoped to meet the old man once more. The young people wished him to get home safely and decided to drink a little more together. The man said goodbye to the young, smiled, and went in the direction of the house with the maid. The young discussed that now that he had returned sooner or later, the gossip about the heir to the Great Heavenly Library would spread quickly. The girl could not wait for new achievements. The young man smiled and said that she would soon be able to see what he was capable of in the great battle of the Heavenly Dragon. Bom Khan and Seonghwa were taking a leisurely stroll. He asked the maid what was wrong with the stench in the room. The girl was silent at first, but then she answered that the smell did not go away and something else came out. He wondered who got out and why the young girl reacted so strangely to what she saw. The middle brother was happy to see him back. Fortunately, the stench was not so strong. Bom Yoon asked if he heard about the creature that crawled out of the library. The young man asked in disbelief if it was a ghost that was creating a very unpleasant aroma. Bon Buman shouted aggressively that there was a hexagonal snake in that place. It was a spirit creature in the form of a viper, one of the 100 majestic spirits. He was the cause of the war. On the creature's head was a yellow carapace with 6 corners. She has red scales and green blood. Thanks to this color of vital liquid, it was possible to significantly increase internal energy, acquire immunity to all poisons, but there was only one drawback. It was a terrible smell. The stench from him was worse than expected. It is said that even if someone managed to get the snake's blood because of the aroma, he would still feel sick. Besides, getting a drink is very problematic. If you immediately pour it into a glass and then drink it, half of the benefit is lost. For better action, it is better to suck it directly from the creature by biting its skin. Grandfather, the middle maid, and the younger brothers, together with the old man's assistant, watched everything that was happening. The smell made them sick. The grandson began to suck the green liquid from the creature with all his might. In order not to feel bad, he covered each nostril with a cloth. Abruptly, the assistant ran out of the room. Grandfather could not understand where he ran. He excused himself by the fact that he had urgent business. Bom Yoon also ran away as if he had been given a task. Seonghwa said she had urgent business and Bon Bumon said she loved the old man. The man considered them worthless. Exhaling, the boy finally swallowed all the blood of the hexagonal snake. The stench was still there. The man was worried if the child was okay because there was a terrible smell in the room. The young man replied that everything is fine in winter. An unpleasant and smelly plume was coming out of his mouth. The grandfather decided to tell his grandson that he was leaving. At the same moment, the old man flew out of the room. Bom Khan couldn't take it anymore. It seemed to him that he would die now, but he held on with his last strength. Now, the heir had a better chance of regaining past abilities within 5 years. There were 3 sources of power. The young man knew everything about them. The hexagonal snake, healing herbs, and poisonous insects were considered the main sources of energy. If you eat all 3 options, the effect should be simply incredible. He himself was not familiar with the benefits of plants and insects, but he had heard that their effect could be compared to the capabilities of the 5 great spirits. Because of this, it was necessary to get the other 2 sources of power. Bom Khan called the middle brother because he knew that he was hiding behind the door with the others. Bom Yoon went into the elder's room and apologized if he did something wrong. The young man handed him a dead snake. The boy's face contorted at what he saw. The old man could not understand why he should pull it out if there was a maid. The young man got angry because he wanted to dispose of a valuable thing. The skin had to be dried for 4 days in the sun and a week in the shade. After that, divide it into 2 equal parts and put it somewhere for storage. The average person could not understand what the benefit was. The elder advised him to read a textbook. In case of illness, tea made from this substance was the best medicine. Bom Yoon understood his brother and began to follow his orders. Bom Khan also asked the young man to find him a 5-day supply of pekukdan. The boy could not understand where to find such a thing. The young man remembered what was said in the books. In order to increase the effectiveness of the snake's blood, it was necessary to reduce food intake for several days. Because of this, he decided not to eat at all for 5 days. His verdict sounded persistent and confident. Bom Yoon ran in search of a sunny spot to dry the snakeskin. He couldn't understand how he even dared to ask such a question. The elder heir asked if the girl had heard their conversation. Confused, Seonghwa agreed. He had a small request for the young woman. I had to ask my grandfather to get him medicinal and poisonous insects. The servant asked him again uncertainly. The man agreed. He said that when she told him, he would figure it out himself. The master ordered to go if she understood everything. When Bom Khan was left alone, he realized how heartless everyone was. The boy was standing alone in the middle of the corridor. 6 days have passed since absorbing the blood of the hexagonal snake. The weather was warm outside, and blue light shone from the windows of the room. The guy was sitting on the floor and meditating. He managed to achieve 2 stars again. Because of this, the young man's eyesight became much better. He saw everything, down to the smallest dots. The same thing happened with hearing. Bom Khan could hear the brothers talking about meals. The younger one did not want to eat without the older one. There was not much left to suffer. It is already the 5th day. The heir considered them to be fools because he had drunk blood, so why should they eat only pagokdan? Even so, his brothers are not so bad. The more the young man spent time with them, the cuter and funnier they looked. All the things got dirty again. It seems that after the union of body, mind and soul, the remnants of toxic energy came out of it. The young man looked in the mirror and could not get used to this face for a long time, but he already began to get used to this appearance. The young man was still very thin. He looked at his brush. If the hands were thicker, they would look better when hitting. As Bom Khan reached a new level, the martial art had to grow as well. He wanted to check it out. But then the relatives would make a fuss again. They would ask if he is not feeling well, why he decides to make such decisions, and many other similar phrases. The boy wanted to try the Karun technique again. He decided to start from the right upper limb. It was a property that could be used to rearrange the bones in the body. The hand began to crumble. Initially, it was used to enter the room through small openings, but you can simply break the wall, but it is not clear why to reduce yourself. It was this technique that was more useful to use for fights with your enemies. The upper extremity decreased. It was not bad. Due to the fact that the young man's level was still low, the process was very slow. It reminded him of one person. Bom Khan remembered a monk who knew magic to his bones. The man confidently invited the gentleman to look at his new phenomenal development. He pointed 2 index fingers opposite each other. At that moment, a real miracle happened. Thanks to this technique, the monarch could become heir. Unlike Karun, this property was on a completely different level. close to divine, and provided the ability to escape from any place. The head asked the man if it was necessary to be locked up somewhere in order to use the equipment. "Can't you kill those who can shut you down?" The monk remained silent. The young man still could not understand why he had created such an unnecessary function. The servant decided to say goodbye. The girl brought Mr. A change of clothes. The young heir allowed her to enter the room. Seonghwa asked if the host had finished training. The guy answered yes. His body felt much lighter. The maid gave Bom Khan his belongings and made a small request to him. The girl had to go to a meeting, so she had to be away for a while. The old man said that the servant may not report to him about such trifles. The young woman laughed and replied that she was still his shadow. The boy ordered her to go because she would be late. On the staircase, everyone was informed about how the senior heir of the great heavenly library had changed and that he had given up his past lifestyle. The main man said that if he is a follower, he is also a representative of this holy building. Of course, Bom Khan will meet and interact with important and respected persons. Based on this, the bodyguards must not only protect him from danger, but also from spoiling his reputation. Those with whom the recent skirmish took place were from the Manhwa sect. Word reached the court that they were going to attack the great heavenly library to avenge the humiliation. The chief said that they should not only protect the heir, but also ensure the safety of everyone present. This was the meaning of their lives. He wanted to pay attention to something else. The two men began to talk to each other. They could not understand what was happening. Bom Khan asked to find the leader and call him not to talk. The cause was unknown. Seonghwa was surprised because her master had never done this. She remembered that she had warned him about the gathering of bodyguards, but he called him anyway. Was there something urgent? She should have stayed with him. The man left the meeting with a smile. He was called Mr. He hoped nothing serious had happened. The elder descendant of the great heavenly library was sitting at the table and reading books. Suddenly, the young man heard a knock on the door and became alert. He tried to understand who wanted to disturb him. It was the leader of the defenders. The boy turned to the head, but could not understand why he came to him, because a meeting of servants was taking place on the street at that time. The bodyguard wanted to say something to him. He allowed him to enter. According to the memories, there was no definite relationship between them. Seonghwa was telling the heir about the fees. The man agreed with him, but he had to tell him important information. It could not be postponed. Bom Khan was surprised. Molodik did not understand what urgent news the servant could have. The leader of the bodyguards answered him with a smile that he would like to help the master more actively. The young man did not understand him because he had never asked for such a thing. The man slowly took the small knife in his hands. The servant asked the master if he wanted to die before that and smiled strangely. An unknown man was standing by the window. His loyal servants stood behind him. He understood that the young man did not want to go to the next world. Men remembered the moment when the young man did not give up the poison. The stranger took a step and understood something. Secret was embarrassed that he didn't die, but it was better that way. If the heir decides to end his life, then the great library in heaven will come to an end. The man turned to the two people standing behind him. They needed something from the owner. They saw that the owner did not look very well and asked what was bothering him. One of them heard from the second heir that the first was studying martial arts. The stranger was surprised, but he was more concerned about why the boys were interested. The servants answered him that there was nothing special about it, but the master was wary. He said that they are really careful. Even if the young man learned to use these powers, it was not a threat. Security guards are trusted, no one will suspect them. Everything should have turned out like clockwork. It was worth remembering. Bom Khan should commit suicide. You can't kill him, but if he starts to resist, you just have to cut his throat, as if he did it himself. The men assured their master that it would be a very easy task for them. The leader asked the young man if he was happy to whet the knife. Now was the time to use it. The heir understood that he had called the bodyguards to a meeting in order to be alone with him. He was trying to understand why it all started and how deeply he was involved in it. It seems he still thought the boy still wanted to die, but he didn't. The criminal laughed because he does not think that a person can change so quickly. Bomb Khan looked at the manager with displeasure and assured him that he was no longer what he was before. The heathen was surprised, questioned him once more, and in the end, a sly smile appeared on his face. In this case, he asked the young man not to flinch. He quickly made an attempt on the young man. These were the points of support of the sky and the mighty river. If you hit them, you can paralyze the whole body. Smiling, the heir realized that he was a scoundrel. While he wanted to die, death never came, but as soon as he decided to live, it came so easily. The old man spoke of himself as if he were another person, but the desire to commit suicide belonged to him. What would happen if he died at the very moment when all the medicines were happy that he would live? Total destruction. Then his old grandfather would have left this world together with his recently recovered uncle. The second and third heirs lose their discretion. They would drown their sorrows in alcohol and become bad people locked in private rooms. Everything had to end. With aggression in his words, the young man said that the leader of the bodyguards has a very long tongue. The man was surprised. It is unlikely that he invented it himself. Parubka wondered who else was involved in this. The servant got mad and began to call the master bad words. In his opinion, nothing will change if he listens to what he has to say. Bomb Khan asked the man to open his eyes. The heir changed his mind. He stood opposite the pagan. The scoundrel was frightened and confused. He was surprised how the gentleman could move if he was supposed to be paralyzed. The man did not want to answer the question just like that. The criminal was surprised. He was not a boy who had such strong tricks in reserve. Sharply, the head of the bodyguards took out a sword and pointed it at the heir. The old man didn't even move his moustache. The guy threw the table at the man with one movement of his hand. The object flew straight at the weapon. The heathen made a strong swing, after which the table shattered into small pieces. Bomb Khan asked the man not to spoil things. The scoundrel ignored his words. He could not understand why he had such a reaction and why the young man was so calm. It pissed him off. Calling the elder heir a bad word, he attacked him again with a sword. The head of the bodyguards bent his fingers in front of his face. He tried to make a magic strike, but he failed. Bomb Khan tried to understand what it was. The position was similar to the paw of a tiger or a dragon. Most of all, this gesture reminded the young man of a small cat's paw. The boy calmly turned away from the madman's hand, waiting for the further development of events. Laughing strangely, the traitor said that the young man was lucky to turn away from his attack. The heathen threatened Bomb Khan as if luck would no longer save him. The old man was able to deflect the man's sword again. He gave him half an hour to demonstrate his best. The traitor complained, saying that the heir was very greedy. The young man did not pay attention to this. The man asked the man if he wanted to live another half hour and started the attack again. Molodik withstood his failed attack again. A real battle has begun. Bomb Khan successfully deflected. This pissed off the heathen, but he could not do anything. Clinging to the leader, the boy placed 2 fingers on his body. He managed to land a magical blow on him. The man cursed and became confused due to severe pain in all organs and even the skin. Fortunately for the traitor, the young man did not have time to block all the energy, but his speed was impressive. When the second heir told him that his older brother had beaten him, he thought it was a joke. Now the master himself asked him what he was planning to do and whether he was tired. That is, it was true. The leader understood that it would be difficult to make Bomb Khan destroy himself, so he decided to kill him with his own hands. Unexpected flashes appeared in space. They had no effect and benefit. The young man watched the traitor intently. No matter how hard he tried, the sword still flew past him. There were hundreds of palms above the fence. He watched them carefully and waited for the climax. Again, the boy was able to bypass all obstacles. This was expected for Bomb Khan. The man was very angry. He couldn't understand how the heir avoided his attacks by moving with a step. He was in range all this time, but somehow he couldn't aim properly. The traitor looked tired and angry. Bomb Khan informed him that half an hour had passed. The old man held out his hand in front of him. The manager shouted in exasperation as if he had had enough. He tried again to make a failed shot. The heir to the great heavenly library attacked the thief. Magic power completely enveloped the man's body. He touched everything, but did not touch the sensitive points. The leader was confused and asked the host why he decided to do this to him. The young man could have hit him in places that could have killed him, but he didn't. The man asked if the master wanted him to come over to his side. The boy laughed. The old man said that the traitor has a talent for comedy. He doesn't need someone like him. The head of the bodyguards was beside himself with anger, so he just kept silent, gritting his teeth. Bom Khan ordered that the nonsense be stopped. He ordered the man to kneel. At that moment, his head became dizzy, and because of this, the scoundrel fell. After regaining consciousness, the thief could not understand what was happening. Pupils almost disappeared from eyes. The face was full of fear. The space resembled hell. The heir smiled, looked at him and reminded him, "It is not worth it." He had to understand who he was challenging. The leader asked to take pity on him. In an instant, Bom Khan turned the leader of the bodyguards into a soul in an inexplicable form. The young man smiled again and asked the crippled man who else was involved in this case. The thief was still begging for alms, but the boy told him to be quiet for a moment. Someone was approaching their place. There are definitely 2 people, but it is not known who they were. The heir was wary. He tried to listen to the footsteps of the unknown. These were his brothers, Bom Yun and Bom Buman. He decided to call them to him. The young men waved their hands joyfully. Surely the boy was waiting for them. They couldn't understand how he knew they were coming here. The Heavenly Library elder descendant opened the door and even called to come in. Junior and Middle were in shock. Before them was an incomprehensible substance. Was it the soul of the guard captain? Bom Yun asked Bom Khan if he was talking about Chongu-in's bodyguard. The youngest heir was already running to her husband. Did the plague come to them too? Bom Bumon did not know that she could lead to such a thing and offered to take him to the doctor immediately. The brother agreed with him. It was something else. At that moment, the young man again asked the creatures how they agreed to this, how it all started, and who were involved in it. The middle descendant of the great celestial library demanded an explanation from the elder. The scoundrel was still begging for alms. He realized that he had made a mistake and promised to tell everything. He was cunning and treacherous. The chief in this conspiracy was the manager. The pagan watched every step of the descendant. 8 bodyguards out of 32, including the man and his deputies, participated in this conspiracy. 1 more person was from the teaching staff and 5 people from the accounting department. The leader was a man named Guak. Bom Yun couldn't understand how you could be so bad. There was no one to blame. The question arose, what were they doing together all this time? At that point in time, Bom Khan had lost his mind, but how the young men had brought the family to such a state was unclear. The boys made excuses. They said that they too had a complete mess in their heads. He remembered this body and the fact that the young man was definitely to blame for all the family's problems. Big Brother ordered Bom Booman to activate the outer seals and raised a barrier around the library. Not even a fly was supposed to fly out of here. Molodik wanted to tell this after he figured it out. Bom Yun had to use the Black Thunder Darkness technique to grab the body of the guards involved in this crime. The sky and the earth were engulfed in darkness, and lightning began to strike. This technique did not allow people in the crowd to find each other. Bom Khan thought things were not so bad as to make a fuss. The main thing is to find the leader of what? The organizer of the sect. To overcome this is not a problem. They are demoralized only by the fact that he looked flawless. He asked the middle heir if he knew any weaknesses of those Chongu-in had revealed. The young man thought. He thought he remembered something about Chon Maguk. The guy heard that he loves his family very much. It was good because for the sake of protecting his family, he was willing to commit treason. The brothers decided to act. There was complete silence and misunderstanding. Servants stood in columns and waited for the problem to be solved and the meeting to continue. A man reported that the captain was delayed. He hoped he had everything under control. Suddenly, a powerful flow of magical energy appeared from the sky. It was definitely a portal. Nobody understood what happened. Something very strange fell from the sky. They could not believe what they saw. It was a large layer of flesh. It was not entirely clear what exactly this creature was saying. Seonghwa was confused, but remembered that she had heard that voice somewhere before, and it sounded very familiar to her. The girl understood that it was their commander-in-chief because he was away for a meeting with Mr. Shi did not understand what had happened to him in such a short period of time. The girl was lost in thought. If something happened to her master, it would mean that she was a terrible protector of his body. Bom Yun complained that he tried to kill Bom Khan but was defeated by the curse. The young woman was very happy that everything was fine with the heir of the great heavenly library. The young man confidently asked Xianghua about the thief, but she didn't know what to say. It was not clear why the man had a face like he had never seen before. The maid looked at the other guards. The other 6 looked the same. Something was wrong. The girl understood that these men turned out to be traitors. She was very angry with them. Soon, the situation was resolved. Those who participated in the conspiracy did not even hide their guilt. The uprising was quickly stopped. The man must have been confused by his appearance, as they expected him to die at the hands of Chongguin. The young man wondered how much time and effort it took the manager to rob half of the library. He was interested in how to get back all the valuables and books that were sold. Someone came to the boy. It was Bom Yun. He brought a traitor to him. Bom Khan allowed to enter the room. The man was very afraid of the owner, so he just stood without saying a word. The gentleman asked if he had a beautiful wife and a sweet, pretty daughter. He was very wary. Chongguin fell to his knees before him. He knew that he was a bad person and committed a mortal sin. The guard forgot about creating good and allowed his heart to be poisoned. Although he was threatened, the man committed an unforgivable crime. If the heir gave the order to die, he would carry out the order, but his wife and child were not involved in it. They did not know anything, so the scoundrel asked not to touch them. Bom Khan smiled and said he didn't mean to do that. The man still did not understand how it could be the same young man. He managed to turn their captain from a man into an incomprehensible substance. This relaxed look was worse than a stern one. He could do anything the master wanted. The owner would never lose hope in him. Bom Khan asked Chongguin if he could bring him the sect leader by nightfall. The servant replied that he should not worry because he did not need to do anything for this. The heir to the great heavenly library was waiting for this visit. He understood that things don't always go as planned. The man could change his mind or deepen his doubts. This meant that the young man could change his decision. If his determination wants to leave him, it should be remembered. Parubok did not want to do something bad, but in the event of a wrong decision, he was not responsible for his actions. Chongguin promised to do everything to bring the manager to Mr. Bom Khan, emphasized the same. He must be alive. The chief looked at his reflection in the water and asked his subjects if the eldest heir had died. The answer was positive. The man asked whether the young man did it himself or with the help of someone. His face had a serious look. The attendant replied that it was 100% suicide of the young scion. The criminal with a sad face asked why the master decided to do this, and how those who loved and appreciated him the most, who chose the wrong path, would have to live on. He did not understand how he would continue to exist after that. It was his fault, because the manager neglected the boy. The old scoundrel laughed sharply and asked if he had done a good job of getting into the role. The servant replied that everything was fine and even his heart shuddered at what he heard. The thief was happy about it. The entire heavenly library would go into mourning, so he had to show his grief. The man was interested in why this young man was telling him about all the events and news. Chongguin replied that he was on the ruler's side, so there was nothing strange about it. The confusion was that he did not know whether he would participate in the project through his wife and child, but today he came alone to announce such an important event. He agreed with his opinion. Under other conditions, he refused, even if it was an order. Today was a special day. It was an honor for him. The chief remarked that he was more faithful than he seemed. It seems that now they have more business because it was necessary to organize a funeral. The library must be drowned in the tears of pagans. 2 men were standing at the entrance gate to the premises. They waited until they were opened. The door slowly opened and a silhouette appeared in the gap. The driver couldn't hold back his smile. His expression suddenly changed. In front of him stood the living Bom Khan. Behind the young man stood Bom Yun and Bom Bumon. The pagan could not contain his anger. The heir of the great heavenly structure ordered to capture the man. When he regained consciousness, he found that he was bound and turned upside down. The grandfather told his grandson that no matter what mistake he made, they were not in the forest clan and could not question him like that. The young man asked his grandfather to accept it. He is already very soft on the one who tried to kill him. The old man agreed with the young man, but still asked not to kill the traitor. Even the head librarian tried to persuade the boy. The pagan hoped that he might be left alive. Xianghua asked the man if she could still beat the man if the grandfather had already left. Bom Khan told the girl to leave the room, then why did she still stay here and brought that bat with her? The young woman replied that she did so because she is his shadow. The senior heir turned to Guakdo. Behind him stood a maid. The man answered Mr. The old man asked him if the pagan considered him the main one. Now he was the most important person in the room, so the criminal had to tell him the truth. The boy knew. The scoundrel was behind this attempt. The head of the congregation said that the young man was very wise and strong for his years. The man said that this dangerous organization was called Black Squid. Bom Khan asked again. He had never heard of this gathering of persons existing in Marima. Xianghua wondered why the master was acting as if he knew everything about the alliance. It was not surprising that the boy did not know about the existence of the union. The Black Squad was secretly created by the Soman clan and Master Zhongwol. The heir listened to him intently. It was one of the most powerful organizations. Although the man's sect was small, it was highly respected. These two seemed very suspicious to him. It was not surprising. Due to the state of the library, it became a free tidbit in the middle of the table. Moreover, the leader of the Somun clan, Somun-ju, does not look like a good person. Bom Khan didn't know what Zhongwol's master was like. He asked the manager why he did not tell him the truth, but only interesting facts. Perhaps he thought that he would talk nonsense and avoid punishment. If Chon Gu-in had decided to lie, he would have said something more confident. Who in their right mind would blame a small organization? He did not manage to get rid of the heir after the old man, forcing both to commit suicide. As soon as the Black Squad was able to enter the premises, the clan and sects were going to turn everything on them. To do this, they broke the protective seal. The hexagonal snake appeared just at that moment. He wanted the library to suffer as few losses as possible, so he opposed the plan. Because of this, it was necessary to exchange this symbol with the Soman clan, because then they would not be able to deny that they were involved in this conspiracy. The girl turned to the man asking if the manager was telling the truth. Xianghua couldn't believe that such respected clans wanted to take over the shrine. She thought the squad symbol might have been a fake. Even if it were true, they would deny their involvement in its creation. Bom Khan replied that they needed to confirm everything, so he ordered her to go to the traitor's house to find the sign. The maid agreed. At this time, the young man decided to make a trap for these foolish people. The young woman was surprised and asked the man again. She looked very confused. The main heir of the Heavenly Library came to the meeting to give a speech for his servants. The bodyguards were waiting for his orders. They were ready to risk their lives for their master. Bom Khan wondered if they would be so bold after knowing what happened to the manager. They could be trusted. They are not from the shrine, despite all the troubles in the family. The traitor could not turn these people over to the dark side. The young man carefully listened to the master's orders. He demanded to go forward, to die in battle. That is what it means to be a real warrior. They agreed with him. Perubok pleased the boys. He said that they would not have to die today. The new moon wanted everyone to rest today, spend the whole day outside the premises, but return to it tomorrow. Everyone was surprised. Rumours had to be spread that the Soman clan and Master Zhongwol's sect had formed a Black Squad and were trying to take over the Great Heavenly Library. They need to make sure that everyone is talking about it the next day. Bom Khan asked if the servant understood his request. The young men agreed in unison. If this organization was really behind all of this method would really force them to stop the plan. The senior heir assured that if the manager lied, they would quickly fix everything as if it was just gossip. Xianghua called out to Mr. He asked if they had found the symbol. The girl and the servant were silent. The man fell to his knees and begged for forgiveness. The whole house of the heathen was empty. They couldn't find anything. When the young people entered the house, they were very surprised. Everything in the room was turned upside down. The girl confirmed his words. They lost the opportunity to find evidence. The boy answered them that the sign was not necessary. The main thing is that someone tried to hide it. That is, the man did not lie to them. Manhwa, along with the crying guard, couldn't understand what was happening. Bom Khan was waiting for the sequel. Now it was necessary to wait for the rumors to spread. Discussion of the news began in the city. The boy stood on the top of the roof and watched the events. The residents talked about the connection of the Simoon clan and the secrets of the master and wondered if they would benefit from this plot. There was still talk of a great heavenly library in the city. It was difficult to put everything together. What will come of this is unknown. Others reasoned that it was possible to simply meet in a sacred space and settle the misunderstanding. They had to catch the bad organization and punish the leader of the group. A young man jumped down from the roof to two unknown men. He was the youngest of them all and told them that he had seen something interesting. They waited for him to tell everything. The boy said that those who gossiped all night went to the mountain where the great heavenly library stands. The brothers could not believe it. Rudy even managed to curse with obscene language. The second began to scold him for this. He said that the young man's mouth was dirty and should have been washed with soap. He couldn't express himself like that anymore. The little one was scared, because the news from the city was true. The elder put his finger in his nose and thought. The average bullied the boy. The unknown person scratched his forehead and pointed with his finger to two specks located in the center. Strangers began to mock him. He understood that Simoon and Jongwol were doing stupid things. If the library suspected something, they would soon get what they deserved. While the young men were laughing, the elder realized that they were about to catch them like a big fish. The little one asked if he was talking about Simon. Rudy called him a bad word and replied that it couldn't have been anyone else. The boy denied it because there was no evidence. The elder was sure. They know because their family were geniuses. Be that as it may, they were on the side of truth. The brothers raised their palms up. They were able to return everything. Bom Booman reported that only 3 magic stamp books, 2 paintings, and 1 porcelain vase were found. Other things were outside the country. It was difficult to find them. Bom Yoon said as expected, they are either of the Soman clan or the Jongwol sect. It should be. The individuals are greedy. If you want things that have no price. The middle sign insisted that it was worth taking the opportunity to expose the liars. The younger one supported him because how could they allow those who pretend to be good to live peacefully? The elder heir of the great heavenly library was interested in how the brothers planned to take revenge. The boys were confused because they did not know the answer to this question. They just stood there in silence. Bom Khan didn't understand what kind of children he had who were not so smart and said such dark words. He asked how many warriors there were in the sect, not counting heads. Bom Yoon suddenly grabbed his knee very hard and began to actively shake and scratch it. The older and younger relatives were surprised by his actions. The little one smiled at what he saw. The young man answered that no, and it just itched. The little one said that it was a very brave thing to play an elder brother like that. Parabok tried to justify himself and asked if he came up with that solution. Bon Boomon offered to report everything to Marima. This was supposed to be the essence of the alliance. The men were shocked. None of those present could have expected such an answer. Relatives talked to each other. One of them said that the fat man had died, but there were still strong masters there. They doubted whether it would work because their influence is greater. The boys were confused. They tried to understand what went wrong in the conversation. The young men wanted to know the opinion of the eldest heir, but he covered his face with his hands. Bom Khan called them bad words because instead of solving everything themselves, they just wanted to blame everything on others. At this rate, they will always remain someone's prey. He decided to come forward himself and tell everything he knew about the scoundrels. Suddenly, something made a noise. Seonghwa suddenly flew into the room and immediately turned to the gentleman. They tried to understand what happened. The maid wanted to share something important about Master Jongwol's organization. The leader of this sect did not come here alone. His daughter was with him. It came as a surprise to everyone. The girl thought that they had come to the wrong place because there was nothing in that place. The old man assured that here was the entrance to the great heavenly library. It turned out to be just an illusion of protection. This forest, the slope and even the clouds in the sky looked realistic, but they were not real. The man was clearly confident in his words. It was the leader of the Zhongwall sect, Bangguan. Father and daughter looked around. A stone accidentally thrown disappeared into the abyss. The girl asked if it was an illusion. The answer was positive. A voice greeted the man and the young woman. He greeted and invited to enter the great heavenly library. The old man ordered Gyo in to follow him. They almost reached their destination. 3 people were sitting at the table, 2 old men and 1 young man. Someone from the audience laughed loudly. Bangguan was glad that the head chief and the heir received his visit so warmly. Grandfather did not want to listen to him. The stranger was always interested in what this building looked like. In life, she was even more beautiful than he imagined. Bom Khan could not understand what was happening. The man asked why they were so quiet and calm. The old man couldn't stand how the man couldn't keep his mouth shut. The cause of the muzzle's continuous laughter is unclear. No one in their right mind would laugh like that. Did he really want to distract the young man with his strange behavior? The old man asked if everything was fine with Mr. He did not understand why he was giggling so much. Bangguan replied that everything is fine and he's just been laughing like that since he was a kid. The elder heir decided to fight in the same way. He began to copy the old man. The leader was surprised by the strange sounds the boy was making. He called him a freak. It was clear that this option did not work. It was the first time the head librarian had seen someone laugh so unusually and uniquely. He asked them to stop. Bom Khan realized that they have been talking for such a long time, but nothing has changed at all. The old man decided to leave the conversation and leave the old man alone. Bangguan asked him to stay with them. The young man politely refused the dubious offer and quickly left the meeting. The old man did not want to sit alone with this strange man. He hoped that no one else would laugh at the great heavenly library like the young master. Having no choice, the grandfather continued to listen to him. He could not hold back tears of disappointment. The young man walked thinking. The leader's daughter should now be with Bom Yun and Bon Bumon in the courtyard. He realized that the sect was not involved in this incident. A man with such a ridiculous laugh could not think of anything against the library. In addition, he came with his daughter, demonstrating that not even a fly would be offended. It seemed as if the truth could only be obtained by asking information from the manager, but now it was necessary to get all possible information from other people. Bom Khan finally saw the young people. He asked them what they were talking about so merrily. Bom Booman noticed that Big Brother had come. The young man asked the lady if the younger ones were rude to her. She denied him and replied that the boys were wonderful and intelligent conversationalists. The heir continued to interrogate the girl. He wondered if she was surprised by the gossip that tarnished the reputation of the sect. The young man agreed with him and said that she even cried out when she heard it for the first time. Once the beauty really wanted to visit the library, taking advantage of these rumors, she persuaded her father to take her with him. The guy asked for a new acquaintance. He liked that she didn't laugh like her strange father. The middle one was telling him how the girl had informed them of combat techniques that could paralyze an enemy by pressing on certain points. They were so interested that they even listened. The leader's daughter said that the boys were very kind. During their meeting, the feelings were very strange. Now, she could definitely say that she did not sense bad energy from the heir to the library. His face looks more friendly than last time. The words and movements were not slow, but not fast either. In general, all the brothers seemed kind and good to the leader's daughter, but she could not understand what they were talking about. Boom Yoon thought that he had asked the girl a difficult question that was difficult for her to answer. In fact, the girl simply did not hear him. Bom Khan asked him why he was asking such difficult questions to a girl. Few people understood such combat techniques, and in a few hours of conversation, she would have told what he asked. The beauty answered as if such variations could not be called impossible. The young woman remembered the moments when her father said that the old texts described the method of rotating energy points. The boys smiled and assured the elder that the lady knew the answer to the question. The young people were still talking about the past topic. Bom Yun and Bom Bumon decided to play a prank on the senior heir of the great heavenly library. The old man laughed and said that he did not want to see them anymore. The younger ones decided to leave the walk. Bom Khan was sitting next to the daughter of the leader of the organization. There was shyness and awkwardness in the air. The girl asked if you were interested in learning something else from her words. She kindly smiled at him. The beauty noticed that the young man did not just kick out the brothers. It was no wonder. The boy wanted to put an end to this scandal, but he rarely left the library, so he knew very little about the Soman clan. He asked the lady to tell more about the union, which was founded by her father. The old man said goodbye to the heir. He promised that he would somehow invite the young man to his place. The girl thanked him for the reception, even though it was unexpected. Dad asked Gyo if Bom Khan seemed strange to his daughter. She did not understand what this question was about. The boy's laughter seemed very strange to him. He remembered how it made a strange sound. The man noticed that no one in the library paid attention to this. The daughter's expression was incomprehensible. The enemy of the geniuses of the great heavenly library was the Samoon clan, one of the most respected organizations with a very strong army. The elder heir hoped that they would not win. It was not enough to hope for it. It was necessary to choose a suitable moment. The manager was their proof of the crimes of this union. Bom Khan's talents and knowledge, as well as him being the former head of the Murima Alliance and the experience accumulated over the years, had to be used as a weapon against the Soman clan. The young man thought that if he called someone for help, then everything was quite good. The middle and younger brothers, together with the maid, secretly followed the heir. Bom Yun thought the elder was up to something. Bom Bumon agreed with him. Lately, the young man has been very thoughtful. The boy asked Seonghwa, since she was his shadow, if she knew anything about it. It seemed to him that the whole matter was with Lady Ban. From the moment when she was their relative all the time in his head, the servant's face immediately changed. It was pale and sad. The old man asked what happened to her. The younger man understood. Two girls fell in love with him at once. He wanted that too. Bom Yun was shocked to hear. It seemed to the young woman that her master was developing a plan to confront the Samoon clan. It seems she was mistaken and he had other interests. The senior heir invited everyone to a late dinner. Seonghwa said it was always good to have a nightly meal. Bon Khan agreed with the maid's words. He offered to eat until I can't eat that night. The brothers were surprised that the boy knew where they were. Bom Bumon ordered to go faster because he wanted to eat very much. The girl asked what dish the young man wanted. The young man asked the middle-aged boy to come to him. He gave him 2 days to extend the library's protective barrier beyond the slope. Bom Yun did not understand why her brother needed this. It was nothing special. The chief descendant just wanted to improve the conditions just in case. The second agreed with his order. Seonghwa shadowed her master. Pan sent her to go to bed because the young girl started to yawn. Bom Khan ordered the guards to release the manager. The criminal looked surprised. He wondered who he turned to when he was developing the plan. The man objected to him because he spoke about it only with the heir of the Soman organization. The pagan ordered him to destroy the shrine. The boy asked the traitor whether it was a descendant. The chief replied that it was exactly this criminal. If it weren't for him, the man wouldn't have gone this far. The old man smiled. He asked this out of curiosity and told the prisoner that he had no intention. The head of the bodyguards was in a complete misunderstanding of what was happening. Bom Khan called the brothers to him. He was going to write a letter and he needed their help. He was recommended to make a link by God, who dreamed of it in a dream. The young men were surprised by his words and were interested in what the saint advised him. The younger one hoped as if the dream should help the library in the future. Bom Yun and Bom Bumon held their breath in silence as they waited impatiently for the new moon's report. The young man said that God told him to run immediately and suddenly disappeared. The younger brothers were surprised. No one could understand what or whom to run away from. Bom Khan suggested that this reference was to the Soman clan's rivalry. They understood that it is strange to run from those who are trying to destroy the house, but the advice should be heeded. The young men had already caught the manager, but it was difficult to bring the organization to clean water. Doing nothing would lead to bloodshed, so they sent them a peace letter to end things without too much fuss. Everything did not go according to plan. Younger descendants were against his opinion. Sending them a link through a strange dream is delusional. They tried to destroy their family. This was unforgivable. The brothers asked Bom Khan if the boy really wanted to bend to the Soman clan, despite them trying to build a library. The young man did not understand what the problem was if he just wanted to live. Bom Yun and Bom Boomin apologized to the eldest heir. The young man called them not smart because they could put his life on the line just like that. Nobody should die. The old man called Seonghwa loudly and harshly. The girl quickly opened the door and approached the owner. The wife brought a stick to the master, but he did not understand why it was for him and said that it would be better for her to clean in the room. The young woman got to work. Bom Khan offered to write letters after all, if now they agreed with his opinion. The message addressed the leader of the Soman clan and suggested that the rumors were confusing the man. The blame lay naturally with the heir of the great heavenly library, as he did not control his subordinates. The boy realized that he was wrong when he thought that it would be easy to deal with everything, despite the fact that he had spread rumors about the manager who had been caught and who had betrayed their plans. If they will cry in front of the organization in the notified, they will agree to finish everything quietly. The brothers hoped for the best. Perhaps after receiving this appeal, the leader will send them a message in return. One of the guards informed the owner that there was a big problem. The young man did not understand why it was necessary to make such a noise. The manager had an attack. No one touched him. They didn't know what happened. The old man could not understand what nonsense this was and how a traitor could have an attack. The young man smiled. Everything was going perfectly according to his plan. The events took place last night before Hu Gon went to the manager. The heir looked in the mirror. The method was not bad. The body shrunk in a matter of seconds. It can regenerate energy faster by using up energy from sleep. This meant influencing the acupuncture points. If this method was effective, then the young man had to use the secret technique. It was strange to him that Bom Yun decided to ask Yo In about this. Bom Khan remembered how the girl talked about such a variation of protection. In fact, few people really understood how to use this technique. It was said that there is a reason why this technique remains unknown to the whole world. The person on whom it was tested did not know at what moment it happened. If Bom Khan, with all the new capabilities, it was possible to secretly take revenge on the Soman clan. The young man left the room to the corridor. He should have been more careful. The elder heir of the great heavenly library wanted to test the power in advance. He ordered the release of the traitor. After the arrival of the security guard, it was clear that the equipment had worked. Due to the difference in the time of the attack and the start of its action, no one will know anything. The old man asked to immediately find out the cause of the illness. The young man smiled and happily sat down at the table. He understood. Now everything is ready. Bom Khan was ready to meet the Soman clan. He wanted to make the scoundrels pay for their dirty tricks. The events took place in northern Manhwa, the Samoon clan. The weather outside was warm and sunny. The unknown person asked his master about what was in the letter. It was the strategist of this organization, the White Brain. It seemed to them as if the great heavenly library was frightened. The head of the union, So Moon Chu, answered to a subordinate. They wanted to meet and apologize for the rumors. Unfortunately, he didn't get what he wanted, but he didn't think it would affect the eldest heir like that. The unknown young man asked if his brother had called. Another replied that he was just in time and asked him to look at this message. The man ordered them to be severely interrogated, but to receive them as well as possible and to let them know that they were dependent on the team. Parabok answered positively. It was a descendant of the clan, So Moonon. Also, he had to meet them not on the street, but immediately invite them inside. The authority of their union will put pressure on them, so they will be more compliant. The boy offered to arrange a so-called dinner where children from wealthy families would be invited. It will be easier to gain trust if they think that they are generous and support them. Adults agreed with him. The old man crumpled the paper out of anger. He could not understand how such a respectable family could behave so unworthily. Grandpa was maddened by their speeches. They seemed to have nothing to do with the crime and forgave them for the rumors they had spread, so they invited them to their place so they could apologize. The middle and younger brothers were unhappy because they could not believe that they lived in such an unfair world. They were surprised that the return letter was not written by the head of the clan, but by the heir. The husband and his grandchildren could not accept such an attitude and began to cry. The eldest descendant sat calmly and thought about the next step. He noticed something interesting. The criminals invited children from other rich families. It seemed that they were going to humiliate them by forcing them to apologize in front of a large number of people, but that was even better. The grandfather was surprised that the child did not even feel anything when he saw this answer. The men hugged each other out of resentment. Bom Khan understood that something had to be done with them. The young man tried to lose his temper. He seemed to be so angry at the response in the return message. If he continued to just sit like that, he would blow up the whole room. The old man went to get some fresh air and asked his relatives not to look for him. Relatives and assistant continued to shed tears. It was figurative for them because the eldest heir of the great heavenly library had no strength left for emotions. The guy was thinking where to go. The maid tried to dissuade the master from going to the Soman clan. The host asked if the girl was worried about him. But she answered that yes. They invited so many people to humiliate him. Bom Khan asked Seonghwa not to worry because he was already thinking about it too. Young people had two institutions to choose from. The first had the tastiest pork, and the second had the best fried food. The young man asked the maid what she wanted to eat. She really wanted delicious shrimp, but the young man decided to go to a restaurant with meat. Very appetizing dishes were brought to the young people. The subordinate wished the heir a delicious meal. It is not clear from where, a very unpleasant smell appeared on the street. Residents could not inhale this stench. This aroma came from some people. Strangers watched as Bom Khan and Seonghwa sat in a restaurant and ate delicious food. They envied this rich man. The red-haired youth answered the other that they were poor. He tried to understand if his brother was insulting him and threatened to kill him personally if he said that again. The younger one reminded them of their family motto, "If you want to die, just say a figurative word and you will be killed immediately." The elder promised to cut him into pieces and feed them to the dogs. They wondered if the library was up to something bad, but they immediately threw in this version, because even the Soman clan was stronger than these bookworms. The man wanted to call him a not-so-kind word, but the boy asked him to look up. They looked at the eldest heir. One of them thought he was using an exposure technique. Another was confused. Bom Khan watched the poor boys from the window and smiled back at them. Seonghwa wondered why the heir to the great heavenly library began to laugh. She also decided to pay attention to the events outside the window. After finishing lunch, the young man asked his subordinate not to forget to buy the most expensive bottle of alcohol in the restaurant when they would go out. The girl could not understand why he needed this particular wine. There was a lot of alcohol at home, which is much better than this. The strangers asked Bom Khan to stop. The older and younger brothers wanted to talk to the young man. The old man realized that he was already familiar with them. The men wondered why he looked at them as if he wanted to say something and then just left. Seonghwa explained and assured the beggars that they did not understand everything that way. The poor wanted the girl to shut up. They wanted to talk to the young heir in person. The young man calmly watched them. One of the brothers remarked that his eye color was not like that of a blind person. He didn't understand then why he was looking at them. Bom Khan apologized for his look. There was no good reason for this. He just happened to see two people from the opening squad, so he was interested in watching. Goosebumps ran down the redhead's body. The boy could actually see them, although they were sitting in a prominent place near the establishment, but only the boy could notice them. For some reason it seemed to the beggar as if the young man was familiar with them, and the technique of concealment was in no way connected with the great heavenly library. The man carefully examined the elder heir once more, but he was still doubtful. The elder asked Bom Khan if they had met somewhere before. The young man continued to stand calmly. In fact, the man was right. In his past life, he met the poor several times. It was a follower of the opening squad, Choi Woon Gai. He was a favorite of the master who introduced them. The boy stood opposite the old head and did not want to discuss anything with him. Hu Gon hugged his stomach and asked the young man if he wanted to tell him something. The young man offered to run ahead to find out who was faster. The head of the alliance did not expect this. The teacher called the boy bad words and pressed his face to the floor with his foot. It was hard to forget someone who left such a first impression. At first it might seem that he's just another robber, but as a student of the opening squad, he is very talented and open to new things. Only such a person can greatly help in the fight against the Soman clan. Bom Khan replied that even if they had seen each other, it did not mean anything. It meant that there was such a fate. An acquaintance can still be arranged. The heir pointed to the maid and continued the conversation. Just on this occasion, he prepared a bottle of alcohol. Maybe you will need their help in the future. Seonghwa understood why she bought it. The beggar likes this development of events. The girl handed him an alcoholic drink. Immediately after that, the poor people introduced themselves. The first was a student of the opening squad, Choi Woon-gai. The second was named Yoon An-gai. They wondered why the young man drank only drinks if he was rich. Bom Khan told as if there was nothing real there. If the brothers have to visit the library in the near future, they will be presented with alcohol much better than this. The young men hugged him and wanted to visit. The elder scion informed them that they would meet later. Choi Woon-gai and Yoon An-gai were upset. They couldn't understand why they couldn't do it now. The young man replied that he would not be able to sit down now. He had to prepare for an evening visit to the Somun clan house. The subordinate asked to download everything without dropping anything. Everyone was preparing for dinner in the yard. Bom Bumon asked Seonghwa to worry about their brother. She should be by his side and not let anything bad happen. The girl calmed down the man. The maid promised that she would not let even a hair fall from his head. The elder assured that nothing like that would happen, so you shouldn't be afraid. I had to go. They got into the carriage and Bom Khan said goodbye to the middle and junior heirs. The boys were very worried about their relative and wanted him to return as soon as possible. Bom Boomun asked Bom Yun if his brother would be okay, even though he said that nothing would happen to him. The young man asked him not to worry because the descendant will manage without him. Besides, he wondered if there was any good news. The old man took out the letter from Chu Yan. It meant that he would have to come soon. The little one was incredibly happy because of this news. His mood rose rapidly and instantly. He was the second son of the richest man in the world and the only best friend of his older brother. Even when it was difficult for the boy, they continued to correspond. They had a very strong relationship. Bom Bumon asked if they were keeping Chu Yan's arrival a secret. The young man answered positively because he said that he wanted to see the heir. In addition, in the letter, he asked to trust him. The Parubkas hoped that as soon as they dealt with this organization, a wonderful life would begin. The handsome young man sat contentedly with a good mood. It was a descendant of the Solman clan, Seo Moonwoon. He was listening to Ryo Chan play a musical instrument. The most beautiful scenes were remembered in his imagination. The tune was really great. The man replied that he was exaggerating. He wondered what memories the music brought to the heir. It was a half-brother, Pyo Roy Chan. Parubik was having fun recalling all the valuable and pleasant moments for him. He remembered how he killed innocent people who asked to be kept alive. Seo Moonwoon took possession of all possible wealth and heirlooms of their tortured families. Magnificent manors burned in hellish fire. For a heathen, it was the best sight. The cute young man hoped someday to see the same landscape that was in the boy's head. It was a picture where his family was destroyed. He called him elder brother, but he didn't even know who his enemy was. That's what happens when you don't have the power. The same could be said about the Great Heavenly Library. It was the largest, but it was famous only for books. Having no strength, they had no choice but to come and apologize. The subordinate informed the master that the guests began to arrive little by little. The Lord ordered him to go and meet them. The young man also ordered Pyo Roy Chan to play for the evening's attendees. The stepbrother agreed. It was the only way he could repay his kindness. He promised to present a wonderful performance. CEO Moonwoon was happy because he understood well that he was lower in status than him. It's time to meet the main guest of the evening. A young gentleman, Bom Khan, has arrived. Old acquaintances were glad to see him. They immediately asked how he was doing. Parubak was glad to see his friends. Among them were Lady Ban, Ms. Mi, and Ms. Jang. A large and plump young man pressed himself against the young man. He was also glad to see the young man. In addition to familiar faces, Bomkan saw many new faces. There were 3 strangers in total. The largest was Wang So-kan from Zhenjiang. The second was Gan Mu from Cheolgim. The oldest of all the figures was Muk-gun, a man from the Ogu Union. The young man tried to remember all the names of his new friends. Unexpectedly, he remembered the Cheolgim squad. Last year he received a letter from there saying that the leader wanted to give him a sword. Then he had to refuse because he already had 3 weapons, which he valued very much. The eldest heir could not even think that he would meet a person from there in such a place. Wang So-kan turned to Bomkan. To him, he looked different than he imagined. The guest thought it would be a gloomy person with sad eyes, but he even looked very happy. Based on this, the stranger did not wish him harm. He thought that he would have to be wary of him because the marriage between his family's children and the Soman clan was going to be fixed, but that was not the case at all. Muk-gun was not pleased. In his opinion, the library had neither shame nor conscience. He insisted that the man must be depressed, so now they are spreading rumors about the organization. Not only that the problem with the head, so Bomkan dared to smile. Lady Ban asked the master why he would say such bad words in such a beautiful place. The man did not understand what was wrong with his phrases. Why did he have to pretend he didn't know what the child knew? The heir to the great heavenly structure asked the girl to calm down and stop talking. The boy assured her that this was not a suitable area for such conversations. The Ogu community was a follower of the Samun clan. This meant that they were under the control of the scoundrels. The gentleman must have eaten something wrong because he decided to lie like a dog right here. Maybe it was worth touching him because he will still bite. The man was very angry. The beauty smiled at these words. Those present began to laugh very hard at what they heard. Someone confirmed that the dog was right on the mark. The chief heir of the Gentile family confidently stepped forward to meet the guests. The old man turned to the guests and invited them to go inside because he knew that everyone had a difficult journey. The chubby weirdo and the sullen scoundrel were the first to greet the evil offspring. Everyone else was waiting for this meeting because they had not seen each other for a long time and were glad to receive the invitation. The young man extended his hand to Bomkan. It was their first and unforgettable meeting in life. It was Seo Moon Woo, the heir of the Soman clan. He greeted the descendant of the great heavenly library. The young man thanked for the invitation and smiled strangely looking at the pagan. Bomkan was very angry. He actively tried to understand what this little one was up to. The boy thought that he would be embarrassed in front of these people. But this has not happened yet. He probably wouldn't throw a feast just like that. Now another wanted to show a trick that would make it taste better. Everyone should have paid attention to his glass and the empty glass of the lady next door. In one moment, the liquid flew out of the bottom and quickly flew to the side of the second vessel. All the contents appeared in the girl's glass. The magic of the flame was truly incredible. The young man was surprised by this because his abilities were really very unusual and unique. It was clear to the heir that the young man was certainly a good man, but he just moved his chi energy into the glass like a small child. After that, everyone decided to demonstrate their skills. Mio Ga-ryong sang the song. Ban Gyo-in turned the contents of the vessel into incredibly bright and beautiful fireworks. The heir of the Soman clan performed a spectacular dance with a sword and a small drop of wine. It seemed cool to those present, but Bomkan wondered if he had decided to stab him to death. The employees of Ogu's organization strained a lot, and he was only able to warm up the wine. The 2 young men who remained decided to put on a show of fighting with invisible weapons. The descendant of the shrine wanted to show everyone the acupressure skills he learned in the library as a child. This technique was directly related to the divine touch. The fat man wanted to ask how this strange ability could work. At this moment, a large number of palms began to touch him. To the stranger, it seemed like something cool, as if a real saint had embraced and resurrected him. Thanks to the hands of the new moon, he was reborn. A bright light emanated from it. The guests started pushing for Bomkan to do the same to them. The guy asked everyone to calm down and promised to do it to everyone one at a time. Then he suggested that the first descendant of the pagan Soman clan should try it. He laughed and called him brother, sat confidently in the chair and wanted to start the procedure. Perhaps the young man behaved as if nothing had happened, but the heir to the library had achieved his goal, so he was going to emerge victorious from the situation. All he had to do was use a secret technique. He froze for a moment and could not understand what was happening. The pagan was released very sharply, the body was relaxed and felt by every cell. The stepbrother did not believe what he saw. Did Seo Moon Woon, who was always reserved, show emotions like this? The other youth was displeased and asked Bom Khan to immediately stop the whole process of sorcery. Fluffy was arguing because he noticed something strange. The guest noted that he walked on it 2 or 3 times. The boy asked Wangso Khan not to worry. The young man arranged a dinner, so there was more attention. The stranger decided that due to this factor, the next meeting would be held at his place, in order to devote the most time to pleasant magical procedures. The guests started laughing together. Now they understood why he demanded truth and attention. One of the young ladies even got scared when he shouted. Other invitees also offered to meet on their territory. They asked not to miss the invitation, especially Bom Khan. The young man looked up with a smile. For him, the guests were children who could not forget their feelings after acupressure until the end of the dinner. The young man thought because nothing happened during the visit. He thought that the heir of the clan had a plan, so he thought of how to catch him off guard. The elder descendant of the great heavenly library had completed his mission, so everything else was unimportant. The boy ordered the maid to go home with him. He was unexpectedly stopped by Seo Moon Woo, who wanted to chat with him before leaving. The old man asked if the guest liked the dinner. Bom Khan said he had a lot of fun and thanked him for the invitation. The pagan was satisfied. The old man wanted to tell him something. The guy decided to show his true face. The heir to the shrine also wanted to tell something. The young man promised to send him a manager. The scoundrel was surprised. The young man explained it as if the traitor should be punished for causing irreparable damage to the reputation of the Soman clan. The descendant of this evil organization completely agreed with the boy's opinion, although he looked confused. Bom Khan continued the dialogue. They tried to interrogate the manager, but it was quite difficult to untie his tongue. They wanted to hand him over immediately, but they were afraid that he would not be able to withstand it. The pagan thought about these words. He called him bad expressions because he understood. The heir of the great heavenly library is not afraid of them. Seo Moon Woo replied that he would really have to deal with the traitor, but he didn't know that the library was worried about his family's reputation. That's how this smart guy tried to ask for pardon. Immediately after returning home, the young man promised to give an order and he would be transferred in a few days. The heathen said that after this, their families would really become even closer. Due to the complex circumstances, the boy wanted to start real brotherly relations with him. He wondered if Bom Khan would accept his offer. The old man was very surprised. The one who wanted to destroy the majestic structure offered him to join forces. The elder heir laughed. He said that such a person as him is not worthy of such a thing from their side. The heathen replied that the master laughed so much because he didn't like it. Seo Moon Woo took the young man by the shoulder and told him that he had to go. Because of this, the young gentleman wanted to talk again when the issue with the manager was resolved. The scoundrel put his hand on his heart and smiled. He assured that the boy is already like a brother to him. Bom Khan laughed out loud. The boy didn't know whether to wait for the secret technique to work or kill him right now. Today was sunny weather. A carriage drove through the forest. The rider confidently and quickly controlled the horses. Xianghua asked if the master agreed that today was a difficult day. It was good that nothing special happened. There was a lot of work to be done, so she suggested something nice to eat. Unexpectedly, the red-haired boy looked out of the window. The girl was very scared. The little one also wants something tasty and filling. The maid asked him who he was. And the young man greeted politely. It was So Chongai. He asked the adult if he was really Bom Khan. His brothers were told to follow him. The young man confirmed his identity. He was interested in what the child's relatives did. The teenager said that they are now just sleeping outside. His turn to rest has already passed. In their family, they did it in turn. The elder heir of the Great Sky Library wondered why the boy was so focused on the fact that they lived in the open sky. It was clear. They are poor. The old man asked the child to be handed over to his brothers as if he would be near the Soman clan at night. So Chongai questioned why the master wanted this. Today, an interesting performance will take place alongside this organization. The boy was interested in this offer. CEO Moon Woo received spa treatments. Unions from the mainland, the sect, the House of Burning Loyalty, presented him with the same wine. In his opinion, the drink looked like something from an ordinary market, but it was better than silk. The young man carefully looked at the gift from the Cholgim squad. The contents of the box surprised him. The young lady gave him a set of 12 long needles. His mother must like them. Moreover, he noticed that the present gave off a pleasant aroma, similar to cedar. The Great Heavenly Library used a very beautiful wood for this treasure box. He wondered if he wanted to leave only a good impression. Paganitz remembered that when he offered him to become brothers, the heir was very confused. Rio Chan had the same face as when the scoundrel proposed to him. Soon, the offspring will be the same as the half-brother playing a musical instrument for him. With such incredible acupressure skills, he will massage all members of his family. The madman decided to look at the gift from Bom Khan. It was 3 books, but he had already managed to steal as many through the manager. The books were titled Achieving Royal Transformation, 8 Ways of Ravaging a Demonic Beast, and Magic of the 6 Suns and 9 Dragons. After opening all the textbooks, the young man realized that they were completely empty. The pages were pure white. These tricks confused him. Seo Moon Woo wanted to report this magical incident to his father immediately. The young man quickly changed his mind because the dinner went well and there was no need to upset the old man. Smiling, the young man thought, if they ask for the materials back, he will happily agree. From the side, it will not look like a complaint. He will accept this defiance on the part of the library with an open heart, but they have no idea what this rebellion on their part will lead to. Unexpectedly, the nose of the descendant of the Soman clan began to flow like a river. The old man looked confused. Seo Moon Woo began to lose consciousness, and his body rapidly fell back into the water. The water turned red. The boy screamed in great pain. The subordinates stood quietly outside the door at this time, not paying attention to the strange sounds. It was already evening outside. All residents were slowly going to their apartments. The man was very upset. He did not understand what had happened because his son seemed to have no enemies. The whole room was covered in traces of the young man's blood. This did not happen due to an oversaturation of internal energy. Someone was involved in it. So, the culprit was a master who knew which points to press. Pan was a shadow. There was no face on it, and he didn't understand who could have done it. The old man asked his subordinate not to be silent. The minion needs to know something in order to develop a plan of action. He knew that there may or may not be many enemies. But whoever it was, he left no traces and decided to grab the snake by the tail. He had no desire to invent any versions, so the relative hoped that they would learn the name of the culprit. The man decided to stay in the Samun clan and try to help the offspring. In the course of events, the elderly man decided to go and make preparations. It seemed to him that the person who did it was an unusual person. Even with years of knowledge, he couldn't guess who tapped the heir's 7 energy points and what kind of technique it was. Moreover, the young man did not do any dangerous actions today. There was only an invited dinner which passed quite calmly. There was a high chance of using secret technology in the meeting. In this case, the interaction with his body could have taken place in the early afternoon or evening. The man didn't even know what level a person with such power should possess. He came to Seo Moon Woo and tried to figure out who could have touched him. The night has come. It has been a long time since my brother left, but he never came back. The boys were watching the clan, but everything was still calm. One of them suggested that he might have been caught by pagans from the organization. There was nothing to do but hope they weren't next. The elder asked to repeat what the middle one said. The relative was confused because the other heard everything. The heir to the library was right. Something interesting happened. The descendant of the Soman clan was torn into small pieces. There was no living space left on it. The little one was surprised and asked how Mr. Sig could have guessed this. The man replied that he should ask him himself. Their work was done, so it was time to return to the memorial. The brothers set out on the road. The boy really wanted to get into the library. The redhead asked him to be quiet. Bomkana's family, together with the maid, carefully observed the actions of the poor. The beggars ate such delicious food for the first time and asked to bring another bottle of wine, which was given last time. They could not understand why the rich looked at them so strangely. Bob Buman told them to observe manners. His elder brother is the heir to the great heavenly library. He represented the whole family here, so they could not communicate with him like this. The redhead asked the younger man if he was getting into trouble by talking to him like that. The young man did not care, he only needed respect. Parubok did not want to allow them to address their relatives in this way, so he decided to teach them manners. Bomkan supported him. The poor man understood that even the young master was not afraid, he was weak. For a new portion of alcohol, he could forgive his mistake. The boy refused his offer and took out the nunchucks to teach him etiquette. While the men were arguing among themselves, the older beggar decided to take a walk, so he informed the heir about it. The man asked Bomkan how he knew in advance that such a calamity would befall a descendant of the Soman clan. The young man spoke as if the stars had told him. The man started laughing and asking the man who did it. He swore not to tell anyone about it. The boy replied that he was probably a person strong enough to destroy the organization, so there was no point in revealing this secret. The beggar thought about his words. The poor man suggested that the descendant quickly and secretly deal with this scoundrel. The young man smiled at him. The heir questioned whether he had really done it. A portal appeared around the boy. The man thought that he was not involved in the murder, but it was a big mistake. In an instant, everything stopped. The boy asked the beggar what happened to him. The man replied that it was nothing. He wondered if that one got a reward for it, or if he was taking everyone's lives without even looking. Bomkan asked him to go with him because he wanted to show something. The poor man was wary. The manager was in the room. He was in cahoots with the Soman clan, destroying the library from the inside. In addition to him, there were several other people who had already been disposed of. The man said that he had caught a big fish. The gentleman was surprised because of what he knew about the plan of the organization. Bezhatko explained that he tried to get to the truth, but could not. Weed thought that the Somun clan was plotting to destroy other families and organizations. The young man promised to invite the head of the union to his place. The beggar asked him if he would come. Bomkan was sure of it. After the letters and gifts he sends, he will have no choice. For now, he had to invite other people. The man did not understand which persons it was about. The guy replied that he knows them very well. The white brain stood in front of Mr. He managed to collect all the pages of the torn book. The owner asked what the book was about. These textbooks were obtained from the great heavenly library, but all the pages were completely white and blank. The man got angry because he did not understand whether the shrine wanted to play a joke on them. The attendant replied that it sounded like such a guess. In addition, only a letter and a large chest were received from them. The gentleman from the Soman clan ordered to open the present urgently. The package looked very strange. When the servants opened the lock, an unpleasant smell wafted through the room. Inside were pieces of an unknown body. The man was shocked by what he saw. Before him lay the remains of his beloved son. The letter addressed the leader of the Soman clan. Heaven saw all the bad deeds of their family, so it sent a curse on your heir, and for such reasons the library suddenly changed its mind. The chief was very angry, but continued to read. Then it was said that they would not fire the manager, but would send a captain of the guard. After looking at them, even an unintelligent person will understand everything. The heathen seethed with fury. He ordered the Black Squad to destroy the monument today, when the dark night comes. A secret union of criminals gathered as a team to fulfill a given mission. The leader hoped that the great heavenly library was ready to answer everything to the Soman clan. Bomkan walked up to them with a smile and stood opposite. Although he sent them gifts and links, they still threatened him. The pagan ordered him to stop talking and asked if the young man was involved in what happened to his son. The young man repeated his question and looked at him. In his opinion, the head himself is to blame for this. He does not want to take revenge, but to take all his anger out on him. The man remarked that the heir could not keep quiet. According to him, he will not be able to talk like that anymore. The boy asked if the evil master planned to completely destroy the library tonight. The men from the Black Squad were standing next to each other. They should have done it, and he will run crying that they did not have time to come to the aid of the holy monument. The leader of the Soman clan realized that Bom Khan was smart enough, but his convolutions were not enough to escape him. The criminal took out a sword so that he would know what real hell is. Gon listened to the pagan's speech. He did not know that he could express himself in such a way with such offensive expressions. In his opinion, if everything that was said is true, today they will feel all the power. The man asked the leader of the Zhongwol sect where he was from. The Black Squad stood in confusion. They could not believe what they saw and heard. Two men stood before them. One of them asked how the head of the Soman clan could afford such a thing. The other could not even think that all this would turn out to be true. They were Zhang Yinim and Myoun Ryo. There were two more. The first trusted them until he saw everything. The second was going to conclude a marriage between families, but changed his mind. They were the head of the Continental Assembly and the leader of the detachment Cholgim. They were also watched by an elder of their congregation. He had to be in exile, outside the country. They removed the old man when they took control. It was not clear how he was found and brought here. The poor man appeared behind Bom Khan. When he heard his request, he was very surprised. But now, since he brought these people, he understood what a good plan the heir had. All this is only with his help. Bejhatko asked the leader of Somun what he planned to do next. It seems that he had no way out for such a case. All persons stood over him. Maybe he should get on his knees and ask for forgiveness before it's too late. The criminal laughed. He'd be lying if he said he wasn't surprised. Did they think that he came to the battle with the library empty-handed? The man took out a sword and ordered the servants to prepare shells. The Black Squad launched an attack. Zhang Yin-im and Myoun Ryo looked confused and very scared. They were scared. The madman noted that the holy structure was an impregnable fort with an unpredictable strategy, but even it would not be able to withstand such a blow. Even one bomb is enough to destroy everything here. Someone asked the leader if he was going to blow up this mountain. The heathen asked if they were scared. Bom Khan was almost upset because they came with nothing but they. The library will only be glad for such a gift. The young man offered to continue this conversation after his fall. The man did not understand his words. Suddenly, a strong earthquake began. No one could have expected such a course of events. Criminals began to fall in droves. It couldn't be. It must be just an illusion. Representatives of the black crowd tried to grab the edge of the cliff. The leader went to grab his sword, but it didn't work. He ordered everyone to calm down and gather immediately. All this was not real, but only a false perception of reality. The boys asked the owner to protect and save their lives. One of the subordinates flew directly at the man's head. The criminal could not allow this. If it falls on him, then he will end. So far, so good for him. The land was far away. In addition, the mountain on which the building stood was really not high. If everything were real, they would have already crashed. The pagan ordered not to let the servant deceive him. It was only magic that put them in a state of not understanding the situation. Respectable men watched the events. They had several questions for the heir. They tried to understand whether the traders were now falling into an illusion. Some of them did not even know how to describe this sight. Bom Khan laughed. It is not for nothing that the great heavenly library is called an impregnable fortress. It's good that he asked his brother to expand the protective stamps to the entire mountain. The magic spread throughout the mountain. The scoundrels were very frightened. They should be more careful because the land is getting closer. They could not accept it. There were strong and bright explosions. Chaos reigned in the center of events. It was impossible to see anything. The men tried to understand. It was just an illusion, or they would die. They wondered if they really couldn't get out of this trap. One of the invitees explained to them that it all happens because the brain and the body are one. Whatever the illusion, the criminals really believed in a group fall inside the mountain. At the moment when individuals mistook the illusion for the real world, even it could kill them. The heir ordered subordinates to remove the dead bodies of members of the Black Squad. The young man didn't even flinch. He knew that it would end like this, which is why he called everyone here, not to protect himself from the Soman clan. He wanted to show the true face of the enemy. The former head of this organization walked past the bloodied guards. The old man turned to the boy with a request. Among the pagans there were still seriously wounded, but still alive people. In his opinion, it was worth alleviating their suffering. Bom Khan agreed to his request. Bodyguards began to cut the throat of the half-dead. The old man thanked him. The foreman was sitting at the table with the guests. He wanted to hide in a mouse hole out of shame. In his opinion, the leader of the Soman clan was terrifying, destroying anyone who stood in his way. He thought that he only wanted to strengthen the strength of the union. It was impossible to imagine what destruction the thief would bring. Zhang Yinim and Mio and Rio felt that there was no one to blame. They too suffered from a cruel person. One of them was very proud of being part of a political union. Bezkatko asked them to stop. It was already deep into the night, so he suggested ending the meeting. Everyone agreed with him. They decided that in order to defeat the organization once and for all, it is worth enlisting the services of the best warriors of the school and the family. To begin with, you need to make a list of the necessary creatures. The heir thought, if he thought about it, it reminded him of the time when he was the head of the Marima Alliance. For Hugon, the meetings were as uninteresting as they were then, but he still missed some people. The old man wanted to return to his real home, but changed his mind because he had only practiced 2 skills so far. Of his 3 secret weapons, the only one he hasn't mastered is blood integrity. But the other 2 developments still needed finishing touches, so there was no need to rush yet. The men waited for Mr.'s answer. The young man did not understand why they wanted to get the final approval from him. He was sure they would manage without his help. The boy himself led them to this plan, so he had to answer. They could do as they chose. In his opinion, they were all masters. Because of this, there should be no difficulties. Everything suited the poor man. He did not have to be nervous, but he could not understand the calmness of the heir, as if he had already experienced many similar cases on himself. The man thought he was a genius. Such a young man skillfully dealt with the Samun clan, but he still needed to gain experience. Bom Khan burst out laughing. Parubok wanted to offer something, but their conversation was abruptly interrupted. Those present were surprised by the strange sounds. The boy opened the door wide. He shouted something about the elder. His face looked very scared. Meili said that the leader of the organization had lost his mind. His eyes were burning red. It seems he rose to take revenge. Bodyguards were ordered to find out what was the matter. Subordinates urgently went to the man. Bom Yun wanted to know from his older brother what happened. The head of the Soman clan stirred up a secret power. This combat technique was used in the last minutes of life. Due to the remaining energy, she multiplied the force by 2 or 3 times. This method helped him forget about the pain. The young man asked the medium to raise his guard and make sure the library was secured. He told him to stay with his grandfather. The boy promised to fulfill his request. There was complete chaos on the street. The heir asked his subordinates what the situation was on the territory of the holy building. They promised to find out everything urgently. When his soldiers were putting the bodies of the dead into carts near the northern gate, the body of the clan head shuddered, and after that, the same thing happened to the bodies of the dead defenders. Although by uniting all the units of subordinates, they quantitatively defeated the criminals, the situation turned against them. Men rose one by one. They were very aggressive, and their eyes expressed incredible anger. Bom Khan, along with invitees, family and servants, watched these events. The pagans arranged a full party on the territory. They had a lot of energy, like for the dead. The little one asked the master if he would watch everything from the side, or if he would call all the warriors from the great heavenly library here. Bom Boomin believed that this should be done, but even then, they would not be able to overcome the enemies. The boy asked the heir to fight them. The elders told him that the young man was very strong and powerful. Bom Khan thought. This situation was not easy for the young man, but he stubbornly went to victory. The duration of the awakening of the secret power was half an hour. After that, the pagan had to die. The old head of the Soman clan tried to fight criminals from his former army. The man was starting to get angry because he couldn't repel the attack of the dead man. It was clear to him that if there were even more dead personalities, the situation would be much worse. A young man was standing behind one of the pagans. He managed to kill the scoundrel who attacked the old man. It was the heir to the great heavenly library. He asked the man if he was all right. The former clan leader was surprised. The young man did not have a sword with him, so the boy asked him for one. He understood that in order to deal with all this, it was necessary to hit the place where all the secret power accumulated in him came from. The descendant of the great heavenly library swung his sword at the traitor with all his might. The young man managed to hit the target. The soldiers began to disappear one by one. Magic power was destroying them. The deadhead of the organization could not believe that the young man decided to fight him personally. The antagonist began to attack the boy with magic. He wanted to see Bomkan's insides. There was a large and powerful release of negative energy. There was a bright explosion. The men from the peaceful military alliance began to worry about the offspring. They tried to call him. The air repelled the attack and flew away from the scene completely intact and unharmed. The fact that the young man was not affected by the shockwave really pissed off the scoundrel. Unexpectedly, the antagonist's life force began to completely leave his body. The sword went through him. The soul was separated from the body. The leader of the Soman clan collapsed without a single breath. Bomkan and the guests watched him carefully. One of the men did not know how it happened, but he was no longer going to believe the rumors about Mr. II, knew that the heir was a master of martial arts, but did not think that it was so much. The guy excused himself, as if the criminal had died because he had lost all his energy. The men assured that the descendant fought the scoundrel as if he were God. Bomkan's swordsmanship and movements were completely different from the other warriors of the Great Heavenly Library. Talking about his personality used to be just incredible, but now it's difficult. A proposal for the final destruction of the Soman clan was heard in the holy structure. All participants agreed. Strange sounds were heard on the street. Other families and organizations from the northern lands invaded the pagan territory. The crumbling structure appealed to the half-brother. The boy informed him that the leader went to the enemies to avenge his son, but it seems he lost. Some soldiers had already reached the palace. CEO Moon Woo asked a relative to kill him. He could no longer live and exist in this form. The heathen was in this formless state. His father was gone. If the library came, things would get even worse. The old man could not understand how he dared to give up his life. Finally, something good happened. He asked the descendant if the heir did not understand people at all. The boy started laughing at his brother. He wondered what it would be like for a scoundrel to feel in his place. The creature began to scream loudly and beg for mercy. The young man asked not to worry. For the sake of pleasure, he will take care of the body for the rest of his life. They will exist together for a long time. Then the events took place the day after the attack of the Soman clan in the middle of the day. The news reached the administration that the army of the criminal organization was completely defeated. After learning about this in the Great Heavenly Library, it was as if there was a celebration. Everyone shed tears of happiness, laughed and rejoiced. A few days later, So Moon Bon came to the place. He brought back the family's stolen treasures, as well as gold bars engraved with apologies. According to the results of the investigation, the Somun clan destroyed at least 5 clans and unions. The elder asked for forgiveness in front of everyone. The man promised to help restore everything. Bomkan understood that he still had about 10 years to pay for all the crimes committed by the former leader. He liked the old man's sense of responsibility. The head of the continental management arrived next. He brought a small wooden box as an apology for wanting to marry a person from the traders' union. The master heard that the heir had recently been looking for healing plants, so he brought him the soul power flower. The manager was afraid that his perception might make him sick for a while. The face of the elder heir of the Great Heavenly Library took on a strange appearance. The young man was glad that the second element was in his hands. After taking the snake's blood, he couldn't find the other ingredients for a long time, so he didn't know if he could get them at all. Parubok could not even think that he would get one of them just like that. The chairman promised that he would prepare a better gift next time. The descendant objected to him. For a young man, it was the best and most unexpected present possible. After that, the heads of the White House and the House of Burning Loyalty came to them. Bomkan did not understand why everyone could not come to him at once. The first said that the leader of the sect, John Wall, did not have a guest ready, so he could not attend. Everyone was wondering what gift he had prepared. The old man asked his daughter to go with him to the Great Heavenly Library. All the other clans also visited, so they couldn't help but show up at the meeting. The girl did not want to go to Mr. Empty-Handed. The father replied that their gift was already ready. The young woman was interested in looking at the presentation. The man pointed a finger at her. He had to somehow marry her off to the eldest heir. Dad assured her that the more she learned about the celestial structure, the better. Establishing a relationship between them was a necessity. The boss shouldn't have told his child about it so harshly. At night, beggars came with empty hands. They announced their arrival and ordered to let them inside. The brothers ate meat, rested, and left. Bom Khan hoped that this would be the end of the visits. Squad Captain Cholgim came to visit the young man with his son Tan Khan Mu. The boy was glad to see the heir. His father told him a lot about the battle with the Soman clan. At dinner, the young man was rather silent, but now he was talking to him as to a close friend. Recently, they remembered that the descendant did not have his sword. Because of this, their wife decided to bring several options so that the young man could choose. In a past life, he received letters from the chief where he said he wanted to give a weapon as a gift. Now, he managed to get her in another life. Bom Khan decided to go for the former. The blade was honed perfectly and the weight distribution is excellent. Thanks to the handle, the weapon when lifted loses first 70% and then 50%, distributing the weight equally. The man was pleased because he said so many nice words about his work. The gentleman offered to look at other specimens. The heir took the second product into his hands. It was surprising to him how harmoniously lightness and hardness were combined in him. It was noticeable how in the flow of energy it became very flexible, so it would be convenient to use it in a variety of combat techniques. Everyone would like to have such a treasure. The captain agreed with the opinion of the descendant of the Great Celestial Library, but reminded that this was not all. The third sword was quite strange. Scabbards and grips looked old. Parabok did not think that he would turn out like this. The young man decided to take a closer look at him. His eyes flashed as if hypnotized. Squad leader Cholgim asked Bom Khan's impression after the inspection. Molodik smiled and replied that he liked this sword very much. The old man looked surprised. He decided to question the descendant again, but received the same answer. The captain asked what kind of gift the heir to the library would choose for himself. All three options were good, but he decided to choose the first. The man asked why the young man made such a choice regarding the choice of weapon. In his opinion, all the products were beautiful, but this one suited him better than the other. The manager was surprised that the boy did not choose the third. A descendant could not take it from someone who had worked on it all his life. Molodik asked to find another owner of the sword, or to pass it on as an inheritance. He knew that Bom Khan would understand everything, but he wondered how the young man had thought of this. The guy explained that next to this product, any would lose its value. But the truth was that all his incredible qualities would manifest themselves only in the hands of the one who made him. In the hands of the maker, its blade became so sharp that it could immediately destroy anything. The edges of the sword are forged in such a way that they multiply the flow of chi energy. The runes were placed not just like that, but in a special order. They harmonized the force, making it more mobile. When used, it not only increased his abilities, but also his warrior skills. Bom Khan could not put into words how impressed he was with his work, so he could not accept him. The man was surprised that the young man explained everything as if he himself was present at the creation. This sword was created by the captain for the best man in the whole world. He crafted it so that it would not be inferior to the other three that Hugon already possessed. Unfortunately, the old man passed away recently. If you have watched this far, I am very grateful to you. I hope you enjoyed this video because I put a lot of effort into creating it. I would be very grateful if you like this video and subscribe to the channel.